Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Luffy Became Strongest Marine Than Grandfather Garp. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Shanks, take me out to sea with you. All the men in the bar laughed at the little boy's exclamation. You're still too young and weak, Luffy. The red-haired man laughed as he slapped his knee. Maybe ask me again in 10 years or so. I'm not young and weak. The boy shouted back, face beginning to turn red. I want to be a pirate like you. At this statement, the laughter in the bar got louder than before. Stop laughing at me. I'm serious. I bet I can beat you, Shanks. Oh, Shanks turned to him on his swivel chair with a big grin on his face. Try me. Luffy lunged towards Shanks only to meet a face full of Shanks' outstretched foot, pushing him back onto the floor with a loud thud. The whole bar exploded into laughter again. Dahaha, train some more, Luffy, and maybe you can match up to me. Shanks roared in laughter. Luffy rubbed his nose with tears in his eyes, sniffling at his failed attempt to prove his strength to the pirate captain. He jumped back on his feet and pointed a finger at Shanks with his chest puffed out in indignation. I will, and when I become stronger than you, you're going to regret not inviting me to your crew. Dahaha, I'll be waiting for that day, Luffy. Shanks burst out laughing again. A sudden loud bang of the bar's door being kicked open immediately silenced the bar as everyone turned to look at the newcomers. A tall, thin man walked in with an ugly smirk on his face, carefully regarding the seated pirates in the bar. On his right hip hung a menacing saber that his right hand rested on lazily. Aurora, so these are pirates. They don't seem like much to me. He spat as he walked into the bar with his men, not even sparing a glance at the seated pirates. He approached the bar where the bar owner, Makino, was standing, slamming a palm on the countertop. I'm not looking for trouble. Just give us 10 barrels of sake and we'll be on our way. Makino held her hands up in front of her in a placating gesture. I'm really sorry, but we're all out of sake now. The man huffed and turned to the seated pirates, squinting his eyes at them as though regarding them for the first time. All taken by these bunch of useless pirates, huh? Ara, I'm really sorry about that. Shanks turned to the man, his hand holding up a bottle of wine. Here, this bottle is still new. You can have it as an apology from us. The thin man swiped his right hand in an arc, smashing the bottle into Shanks. The whole bar held its breath as the broken pieces of glass clattered onto the floor. Don't make me laugh, pirate, the man spat, pulling out a wanted poster from within his cloak. I'm a wanted bandit in this town worth 8 million berries. A bottle of wine won't be enough for me. Shanks, however, was looking at the spilled wine on the ground, not paying attention to the bandit. Awa, now the floor is wet. He crouched down on the floor and began picking pieces of the glass with his hands. Hey, Makino, you have a mop. It's all right, I'll do it. Makino waved frantically to Shanks. The bandit spat at Shanks one more time before taking out his sword to slash at the bar, sending the plates and bottles crashing onto the floor. You like to clean so much, you can clean all this up as well. The bandit turned his back and sheathed his sword, heading out to the door. Come on guys, let's find somewhere else to go, forget about these chickens. The whole bar was silent as the bandits exited the bar. Shanks let out a breath and all the pirates started laughing. That sure got you, Captain. Dahaha, yep, they sure did. Shanks scratched his head in embarrassment. Why are all of you laughing? Luffy screamed at them. You should have fought back. What kind of pirates are you to let them walk all over you? Luffy, Shanks waved his hand in an attempt to placate the boy. It's all right. It's really no big deal. Really, you talk to me about being strong and everything, and yet you seem so weak. I don't want to see you anymore. Luffy ran out of the bar, tears streaming past his cheeks. Luffy, wait. Makino called out to the boy, but he already ran out of the bar. Just let him go, Makino. He's still too young for all this. Shanks sighed. It was a few days later before Makino barged into the mayor's house. Mayor, Luffy's in big trouble. What? What did he do this time? The mayor sighed in exasperation. You're the docks. Get your foot off of me, you filthy bandit. Luffy screamed, trying without avail to push the bandit's foot off him. That's what you get for insulting us, you little twerp. Don't think just because you're a kid I'll let you get away with what you do. The bandit leader spat at the ground near Luffy. Wait, please. The mayor ran towards the bandits and knelt on the ground. I don't know what Luffy did, but please spare him. He's just a kid. We're willing to pay. The bandit turned to regard the kneeling mayor. Too late, old man. This kid managed to piss me off too much. He slowly unsheathed his sword, bringing it down near Luffy in a slow arc. And I won't be satisfied until I kill this kid. Hey you, a voice called out from behind the bandits. Shanks stood impassively with his crew, staring down the bandits. That's my friend you got your foot on over there. Mind if you let him go? The bandits laughed. And here's the little pirate captain. Had fun cleaning up the town. Why don't you run along now before you get hurt again? Shanks remained motionless as he stared down the bandit. TCH, who do you think you are, telling us what to do? A bandit walked haughtily towards Shanks, his pistol drawn. He stopped within a few steps of him and pointed the pistol towards Shanks's head. Our boss told you to back off. I warned you guys. Do as you wish then. Shanks closed his eyes and sighed. The bandit didn't even have time to ask what Shanks was talking about before Lucky Roo shot the bandit in the head, all the while still munching on a piece of meat. The bandit hit the floor with a soft thump as the other bandits watched with open-mouthed shock. You bastards. The bandit leader gritted his teeth, still not letting Luffy go. Get them guys. The bandits yelled and charged the pirates in unison. Beckman stepped out beside his captain, rifle in hand. Let me take care of these punks. Within a blink of an eye, the charging group of bandits were on the ground, unconscious. The bandit leader widened his eyes in fear as the pirates advanced on him. I don't care what you do to me, bandit. Shanks stepped closer to the bandit. You can spit on me, laugh at me, and even ridicule me. But if you hurt my friends, I'll make you pay. TCH, don't mess with me. The bandit screamed as he flung a smoke bomb at his feet, dragging Luffy with him as he made his escape. Luffy, Shanks shouted as the smoke dispersed, revealing an empty street. Damn it, we got careless. Luffy, calm down boss. Beckman held his captain's shoulder reassuringly. Let's spread out to find him. On a boat near the town. They'll never think a mountain bandit will escape to the sea. Ha. The bandit leader laughed maniacally. Shut up you stupid bandit. I'll kick your butt. Luffy lunged at the bandit before being backhanded back onto the boat. Shut it you brat. You're just a stupid kid. I'll kill you right here. The bandit took out his pistol and pointed it at Luffy, who stared back at him with wide, fearful eyes. The bandit smirked at him as he cocked his pistol, until he realized Luffy was staring at something behind him, not at him. The bandit turned as the Lord of the Coast rose out of the water and regarded the bandit with a single unblinking eye. The bandit panicked and shot the pistol at the monster, which spurred Luffy to jump out of the boat and began frantically paddling his way back to shore despite his inability to swim. The pistol bullet ricocheted harmlessly off the monster's hide, and the bandit couldn't do anything as he met his end in the monster's jaws. Meanwhile, Luffy was having trouble staying afloat while paddling for his life at the same time. The monster regarded the panicking Luffy and somehow decided that he was an insult to him and began swimming towards Luffy, jaws wide open. As Luffy screamed at the impending horror, Shanks leapt out in front of him and dragged him away from the snapping of the monster's jaws. Scram! Shanks yelled and the monster retreated obediently. Shanks! Luffy cried, holding on to Shanks tightly. Hey now, Luffy, I thought you were a grown man. You shouldn't be crying like this. Shanks, no, your arm. Luffy cried harder, snot dribbling past his nose. Shanks paid no mind as he brought Luffy to shore. It's only an arm, kid. Nothing to cry about. It's all my fault, Luffy cried, tightening his grip on Shanks. It's not your fault, Luffy. Things like this happens all the time with criminals like that bandit. If you want to prevent things like this from happening, you just need to be stronger than them. Luffy nodded silently, still sniffling. So you're really leaving? Luffy asked, tears threatening to spill out anytime soon. Yeah, we stayed here for far too long. It's time for us to move on. Shanks knelt down in front of the boy, ruffling his hair. As he turned to leave, Luffy gathered up his courage and shouted, I'm going to be an admiral when I grow up, and I'll arrest all those criminals like that bandit. Shanks turned back to him, smiling. What, not planning to be a pirate anymore? Luffy shook his head. I want to protect everyone, and becoming a Marine would let me do that. I'll become a great Marine and capture any criminal that threatened the innocent. Shanks smiled at the boy's resolution. What about us? We're pirates. We're technically criminals. Luffy tilted his head in honest confusion. Well, you guys are good guys, so you're not criminals to me. The crew laughed at Luffy's honest naivety, only to incite a stop laughing at me. From Luffy, Shanks took off his hat and placed it on the boy's head. In that case, I'll leave my treasured hat in your care, Luffy. So follow your dreams and give that back to me when you're finally an admiral. Luffy beamed at him, punching his hands in the air in a victory pose. Yeah, just watch me, Shanks. I'm going to be the best Marine ever. 10 years later. All right, Luffy, here we are. Now get your ass off my ship. Garp yelled. He turned around to see Luffy fast asleep by the side of the deck, a piece of meat hanging in his hands, his straw hat sitting lopsidedly, which seems out of place compared to the rest of his smart Marine attire. A white-collared shirt with the Marine emblem on the left chest was worn loosely with all buttons unbuttoned, revealing Luffy's chest openly. Blue cargo pants stretched downwards where it ended, folded into itself just above his knee area, and a large white cloak was draped loosely on his shoulders. The cloak itself comes complete with red and gold epaulets on its shoulders and the word justice emblazoned smartly in kanji at the back. A tick appeared on the side of Garp's head as he stormed towards Luffy. Wake up, Captain Monkey D. Luffy. A fist landed on Luffy's head, smashing him into the deck of the ship. Luffy jumped up on his feet, rubbing his head in pain. What was that for, Gramps? Garp placed both his hands on his hips and snorted. What are you doing sleeping, Luffy? We're finally here. Garp stepped aside and gestured to Luffy's hometown. Luffy ran towards the prow of the Marine battleship, glancing down excitedly at Fuchsia Village. Garp smiled proudly at his grandson. After going through the hellish training he had put him through without much complaints, Luffy had become a splendid Marine officer. With Sabo's apparent death and Ace's departure, Luffy was more than willing to subject himself to various forms of training in order to become stronger. The first year was spent under Garp himself with an inhuman training plan. Then it was a 1-year attachment to the CP9 headquarters before finally spending the last year as an apprentice under the Marine Admirals Aokiji and Kizaru. Luffy was finally ready to set out on his own. Luffy turned around to see his grandfather beaming proudly at him. He smirked at this and saluted to the old-timer smartly. Garp's smile broadens, never thinking he would see this day. Sure, he had hoped Ace would join the Marines too, but he shrugged that he can never get everything he wanted in life. Thanks for the ride, Vice Admiral Garp. I shall begin my mission here. Luffy turned and prepared to jump away from the ship. Oh, Luffy, before I forget. Garp reached out his hand that was holding onto a piece of paper. I managed to get the higher-ups to comply with your unusual requests. Both grandson and grandfather grinned at this. Garp cleared his throat as he brought the piece of paper in front of him. Your request for the authority to seek out and assemble your own Marine team was granted. Your group will be known as a separate Marine entity operating directly under Vice Admiral Garp's command as the Straw Hat Marines, receiving orders only from him and his associates. Luffy listened intently as Garp stole a wink at him. Your group would not require to respond to any dispatch calls unless directly ordered to and would remain autonomous while in service. You are also granted permission to arrest any criminals and claim their bounties for your personal expenses. But you will not be allowed to requisition for monetary supplies from any Marine base outside of essential living supplies. You are also granted the authority to arrest and detain any Marines that have performed any criminal activities. Garp frowned a little at this, realizing that the headquarters was essentially making Luffy a bounty hunter. Luffy did not seem to mind this in the slightest, though, seeing it as another way to attest his strength to headquarters. As for your first mission, you are required to patrol around the East Blue area and root out any criminal activity in the region. Report back any notable activities directly back to headquarters, and your station shall continue to remain in said location until told otherwise. Signed, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Garp folded the paper neatly and handed it to Luffy, who deposited it into one of his pants pockets. Thanks, Grandpa, you're the best. Luffy gave a thumbs up. Well, haha, make me proud, Luffy. Garp was grinning widely. Go show me the results of your training. I've asked the mayor to prepare a boat for you, so go kick some ass. Shishishi. See ya, Gramps. Luffy turned towards the town and leaped into the air. GAPPO. With a single step, Luffy managed to land on the shore of the town before turning around and giving one final wave to the departing ship. When the battleship is only a small speck in the horizon, Luffy was ready to leave in his small boat with most of the town to see him off. I'm off, everyone. Luffy waved at the villagers. I'm going to become an admiral. The villagers cheered as Luffy slowly drifted away when suddenly, water exploded behind the departing Marine. The Lord of the Coast growled menacingly at the small boat as Luffy turned to regard it. Shishishi, I almost forgot about you, boy. I'm not the same weakling as before. Luffy grinned. The Sea King roared and lunged towards Luffy, jaws wide open. Luffy smirked as he dropped into his battle stance, feet apart. Rankyaku. Luffy kicked his foot in an arc, sending a compressed blade of air towards the Sea King, slicing his head cleanly off. The villagers cheered as Luffy turned to wave at them again. He's going to achieve great things, the mayor sighed contentedly. We're going to miss him, Makino agreed beside him, still waving. A few hours later. Phew, that was a close one. If I wasn't paying attention, that whirlpool would have been the end of me. Luffy laughed. Hearing shouting ahead, Luffy turned and spied land with a small ship anchored next to it. All right, there seems to be some people there. Luffy stood on the prow of his small boat, arms crossed and his coat waving behind him with the wind. My first mission, I can't screw this up if I want to be an admiral. Shishishi. Meanwhile on the island, a small pink-haired boy with round-framed glasses was leaving from locking up a storage shed near the beach. Hey Kobe. Kobe turned to see 3 pirates bearing down at him. You have the key to the storage room, right? A pirate stepped closer, making Kobe shrink back. Yes, why do you need it? Kobe was shivering in fear, trying to hide behind his hands that were raised in fear. Give it to us, we have some inspection to do. One of them smiled. If Captain Alvida finds out. Kobe tried, only for one of them to smack him across the head, sending him sprawling onto the floor. Shut up. If you don't say anything, she won't know, right? The 3 pirates began laughing. Now shut up and give us the key, you stupid boy. The 3 began advancing on him. Hey guys, a sudden voice startled the 4 of them. Turning around, they saw a foolishly grinning boy wearing a straw hat waving at them while walking towards them. The 3 pirates immediately drew out their swords and pointed it towards the advancing boy. Who are you? Where did you come from? What are you doing here? All 3 pirates questioned him at the same time, waving their weapons at him menacingly. Luffy frowned at this and disappeared, reappearing behind them with their weapons in hand. It's dangerous to point these at people you know. Luffy dropped the swords on the ground beside him. While the pirates are still recovering from the shock of losing their weapons so easily, Kobe pointed a shaky finger at Luffy. You're a Marine. This shook the 3 pirates out of their stupor as they immediately turned and ran from them, shouting, Marines are here. Hey, you know what's gotten into them? Luffy asked, pointing at the escaping pirates. Kobe clung onto Luffy's cloak, tears streaming past his cheeks. Sir, you have to help me. My name is Kobe and I was kidnapped by these pirates and was forced to serve under them for the past 2 years in order to survive. Wow, you actually stayed with them for the whole 2 years. Luffy was taken aback. Kobe nodded dumbly, still sniffling. I mean, if you don't like this place so much, why haven't you left yet? Luffy looked questioningly at Kobe. Kobe fell back on his hunches at these words. Impossible, impossible, impossible. If I had tried to leave, they would have killed me. Luffy laughed at this, placing his hands on his hips, mimicking his grandpa. Well, if you're so afraid of them, all you have to do is get stronger, then beat them. Kobe was furiously shaking his head this time. No, definitely impossible. I can never do it. I'm just a weak. Kobe's words were cut off as Luffy's fist landed abruptly on his head. Kobe screamed in pain, clutching at his head. Why did you hit me? Never say that anything is impossible, Kobe. If you're strong, anything is possible. Luffy held out his hand to pull Kobe up. Tell me, Kobe, do you have something you want to do? Luffy grinned. Something I want to do. Yeah, like my dream is to become a Marine Admiral one day. Luffy beamed proudly. Wow, an admiral. Kobe looked down at his feet. To have such a dream, the boy in front of him must be strong. Unlike himself, who always cowered and hid himself whenever something threatened him. His own dream of joining the Marines paled in comparison to the boy standing in front of him. I can never be like him, Kobe thought sadly. Luffy, seeing his depression, smacked him on the head again, gaining another cry of pain from Kobe. Listen, Kobe, anyone can become strong as long as they have the will. Just don't ever give up. Pursue your dreams. Luffy punched into the air victoriously, smiling up at the sky. Shout out your dreams for the world to hear. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Kobe, emboldened by Luffy's energy, turned towards the sea and shouted out his dream. I'm going to be a Marine. Luffy looked at the boy, grinning. A Marine, huh? Yeah, I'm going to become a great Marine and catch tons of bad guys like Alvida. Kobe shouted proudly. Who are you going to catch, Kobe? A menacing voice said behind them. Both boys turned to see Alvida and her crew glaring at them with their weapons drawn. Alvida swung her giant mace menacingly before propping it up on her shoulder. Luffy could swear she heard her growl at them. Kobe stuttered, his earlier courage gone. Hey Kobe, who's the fatty? Luffy pointed at Alvida nonchalantly. Everyone's jaw dropped at his statement and Kobe began to panic. You can't say that, sir. Kobe waved his hands at the Marine in a panic. Luffy tilted his head, confused. Why not? Because Alvida is. Kobe peeked at the fuming Alvida, then back at the grinning face of the Marine officer. Because I'm what, Kobe? Alvida sneered, swinging her mace around her bulbous body. Kobe took one more glance at the Marine, before breathing in and shouted. Because she's the ugliest and fattest pirate I've ever seen, Kobe announced with tears in his eyes. Everyone on Alvida's crew wrung their hands in the air in a panic as Alvida's face reddened with anger. Chishishishi. Well said, Kobe. Luffy laughed. Alvida charged towards Kobe, swinging her mace at him, but Luffy stepped in between them, raising an arm to block the incoming blow. Tekai. Luffy took the full blow of the mace without flinching, rebounding the mace away from him. Everyone's jaw dropped at this inhuman feat. So I take it that you are Captain Alvida, right? With a current bounty of 5 million? Luffy snickered, lowering his arm. Alvida squinted her eyes at the boy. Who are you? Captain Monkey D. Luffy of the Marines, and I'm here to arrest you under the name of justice. Luffy grinned. Like I'll let you. Die, stupid Marine. Alvida charged towards Luffy, her mace raised in the air. Luffy smirked as he stood, unmoving in the face on Alvida's wild swinging. When her mace was about to hit him from above, he nimbly stepped to the right before stepping forward to deliver a single punch into her abdomen. Alvida's grip on her mace loosened, letting it crash onto the floor as her eyes rolled back to her head. As Luffy retracted his hand, she slumped onto the ground without resistance, already unconscious. Luffy turned to the other pirates, grinning at the wide-eyed, open-mouthed crew. Anyone else? All the pirates immediately shook their head in fear. Kobe, help me find some rope and tie her up. Kobe rushed off to do as he was asked. The rest of you, well, you guys don't really have any bounties, so scram. All of Alvida's crew immediately took to their heels. Luffy whipped out a baby Den Mushy, reporting in, "This is Captain Monkey D. Luffy. HQ, do you receive? Receiving you loud and clear. Captain, go ahead. I have Pirate Captain Alvida in my custody, sending you the coordinates to her current location." Over. Luffy grinned as Kobe finished tying the still unconscious Alvida to a nearby tree. Understood, Captain. A ship will be dispatched to pick her up. Good work. Marine base out. Luffy returned the snail back to his cloak and turned to Kobe. Kobe, do you still want to be a Marine? Kobe stared back with all the determination he could. Yes, sir. Tashishi. All right then. There should be a Marine base nearby. I'll sign you up with them. Luffy grinned. Kobe broke out in a wide smile and rushed to grasp Luffy's hands, thanking him profusely while shaking his hands. Onward to Shell's town. Luffy grinned, with Kobe laughing alongside him. The small boat carrying two bobbed along steadily as the wind blew behind it. So how did you become so strong, Luffy? Kobe asked, keeping his hand on the boat's rudder. Luffy grinned, sitting at the prow of the boat with his marine coat on his shoulders. I train with the best, of course. Even though the training was hard, I never once thought of giving up. I have to become an admiral one day. After all. Wow, Kobe gasped in amazement. Do you think I can be as strong as you, Luffy? Luffy looked at the boy's wonder-filled eyes before flashing him a smile. It'll depend on you, Kobe. If you have the will to do it, I'm sure you can be strong too. Wow. Oh, Luffy, why are you traveling alone? I thought a marine captain like yourself should have a crew of some sort, Kobe asked, finally noticing the oddity of the situation. Luffy stood up, cloak fluttering behind him as the wind blew past. I met a pirate when I was young once. He came to my village and stayed there for a while. Oh no, were they raiding it? Kobe asked, shocked. Luffy shook his head quickly. Oh, no. They were good guys even though they were pirates. Not all pirates are bad, Kobe, some are good guys. Kobe scratched his head in confusion, still trying to grasp the probability of there being a good pirate. Anyway, those pirates were strong, even stronger than I am right now. The captain himself saved my life when I was about to be eaten by a sea king then, and I swore to him that I will become stronger. In order to do that, I need to form my own crew strong enough to face other strong criminals that are in the new world. Luffy beamed proudly at Kobe, who looked on in admiration. I heard there's a swordsman that was recently spotted around Shell's town. He's supposedly the best swordsman in this part of the sea, but I heard he's currently detained by the Marine. Kobe's eyes widened at this. You don't mean the pirate hunter, Roronoa Zoro? Yeah, that's him. I'm going to recruit him. Luffy grinned widely. But I heard he's a demon. And he's completely ruthless when he's hunting pirates. I don't think he would suit the image of a Marine. Kobe protested. Shishishishi. If you had seen the kinds of Marines out there, you wouldn't be saying that. Luffy laughed, remembering people like Sakazuki. Kobe was just about to claim that it was impossible before remembering what Luffy had said to him. In order to become stronger, he had to drop the impossible mentality. But how will you recruit him? He's currently a captive of the Marines, and I heard he never liked following orders. Luffy turned to face him, a big foolish grin plastered on his face. I'll find a way. Shishishishi. Shell's town. We're finally here, Luffy exclaimed, jumping down from the boat onto the harbor as Kobe moored their small boat. Hey, Kobe, let's go grab something to eat first. Then we'll head to the Marine base to sign you up. Luffy turned to the elated Kobe. Stepping into a nearby restaurant, Luffy noticed that the atmosphere immediately stiffened upon his entry. Every customer turned away from him and kept their heads down, trying their best not to make eye contact with him. As their food arrived, even the waiter was shivering as he placed the food in front of them before scampering away as fast as he could. Hey Kobe, what's wrong with everyone? Luffy asked, already munching away at his food tactlessly. I don't know. It seems like they're afraid of us, Kobe whispered carefully. Really? Luffy started scanning the restaurant, looking at everyone who has their heads turned away from them. Hey, why are all of you so afraid? Luffy shouted to the restaurant, which immediately prompted everyone to run out of the restaurant, screaming for their lives. Maybe it's because you look scary, Kobe, Luffy accused, pointing a piece of meat towards Kobe. No way. However I see it, it's definitely you, Kobe shouted back, exasperated. But why would they be scared of me? I'm a Marine. You're right. This doesn't make any sense, Kobe pondered, wondering if it had something to do with the Marines that were currently stationed in the town. When he turned back to Luffy, he realized Luffy had helped himself to the food that all the customers had left behind. What the hell are you doing? Kobe screamed with shark-like teeth. What? It's such a waste of good food. Luffy continued to munch down plates of food from the other tables as Kobe shook his head in disbelief. I'm so full, Luffy exclaimed contentedly as he and Kobe made their way to the Marine base. Going through the front door, they notice a reception counter by the side and a single Marine officer seated behind it, fast asleep. Luffy slammed his palm on the table, immediately waking up the Marine, who started spouting that he wasn't asleep and he was awake the whole time. Upon regaining his senses, he finally noticed Luffy and Kobe standing in front of him and visibly relaxed. Welcome to the 153rd Branch Marine Base. How can I help you guys? The Marine raised an eyebrow at the two youths questioningly. Luffy coughed discreetly, getting the Marine's attention before gesturing to his epaulette, which the Marine's eyes widened upon sight. I'm Captain Monkey D. Luffy, reporting in as per my orders to patrol around the East Blue. I have Kobe here with me. Luffy gestured at the nervous Kobe, who stood at rapt attention. He wants to sign up as a Marine. I also believe I have a bounty for collection. The Marine saluted smartly as soon as he heard of Luffy's rank. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Of course, sir. The Marine panicked a bit before sorting through the papers at his desk. I have a report from the Marines that were sent to capture Alvida. Oh, apparently she managed to escape. What? Luffy slammed the table in disbelief, cracking the wooden table and causing the Marine officer to recoil in surprise. How? Luffy demanded, the Marine already shaking in fear. They said they were transporting her to the ship, and she broke free from her bindings and knocked out the Marines around her before escaping. Oh, Luffy visibly relaxed. Is that all? Shishishishi. All right then. Luffy grinned, happy that her escape had nothing to do with him, which might have left an undesirable mark on his records. Confused by his sudden change in demeanor, the Marine continued, seeing as how you did indeed capture her, but her escape was due to the negligence of the transport crew. Headquarters had decided to issue you with the half equivalent of her bounty, 2.5 million berries. Ah, thanks. I'll collect that later. Give Kobe the papers he needs to fill in for his recruitment first. Luffy pushed Kobe closer to the counter. Yes, sir. Sorry, kid. If you could just fill these in. The Marine passed a piece of paper and pen to Kobe, who began filling them out diligently. That's right. I heard a certain Roronoa Zoro is being detained here. Where is he? Luffy commented. The Marine seemed to tense up at the mention of his name but pointed at the window which showed the courtyard. Luffy glimpsed out of the window to see the mentioned swordsman tied up to a wooden post out in the hot sun, seemingly beaten and exhausted. He wore what seemed to be a white shirt that had been bloodied and dark black pants with a green sash around his waist. A black bandana rests securely around his head, his green hair barely visible sticking out at the ends. Luffy pushed open the door without hesitation and made his way to the courtyard. Kobe noticed and dashed out after Luffy, leaving the half-completed papers and a confused Marine behind. Luffy, wait. Kobe grabbed onto his hand. What is it? Luffy stopped in his tracks. You're really trying to recruit a criminal into your ranks. Luffy scratched his chin. I don't know what he has done, so in my books, he's still good guy. Luffy grinned. Kobe face-palmed at Luffy's naivety, wondering how someone like him could be a Marine captain. A scratching sound from the courtyard attracted their attention as a little girl climbed over the wall with a ladder before running towards the tied-up swordsman. The two youths moved closer to the fence as the girl opened up a small package to reveal 2 rice balls, offering them to the exhausted swordsman. Beat it, kid. I don't need your food. Zoro sighed, looking away from the girl. I tried my best to make it. Please eat something. They already starved you for a long time already. The girl cried. I'm not hungry. Now get lost. Zoro yelled back. The gate flung open nearby as 2 Marine soldiers escorted a teen into the courtyard. The teen seemed to carry an air of arrogant authority as he wore a permanent smirk on his face. This, in turn, seemed to match his black suit and blonde hair that screamed with arrogance. They did not notice Luffy and Kobe standing at the side. Hey now, Zoro, don't be so mean to little kids, or my father might hear about this. The blonde teen smirked, idly stroking the end of his collar. Zoro rolled his eyes. If it isn't the bastard son. Hey, watch your mouth. My father's the captain of this base. I can have you executed if I want to. The teen raged. He noticed the girl standing beside Zoro with the rice balls in her hand and quickly advanced towards them, snatching a rice ball away from her when he got close. These rice balls look tasty. Don't waste it on such a useless guy like him. Haha. The girl tried to protest, but the teen already bit into one before spitting it out again. Arg, what is this? You're supposed to use salt, not sugar, you damn brat. He threw the rice ball on the ground and knocked the other one over as well, stamping down with his foot a few times, ignoring the pleas of the girl. The girl started crying, which only made the teen sigh in exasperation. You brought this upon yourself, you know. He gestured towards a sign nearby. Anyone caught helping a prisoner will be charged with the same crime. I'm sure you don't want that, do you? The girl shook her head quickly. The teen turned to one of the guards and pointed at the girl. Throw her out. The guard seemed shocked at this and hesitated before he was grabbed by the teen. You want to disobey me? I'll tell my father. You hear me? Aye, sir. The guard quickly took a hold of the girl and brought her to the wall, apologizing to the girl along the way before tossing her, screaming, over the wall. Kobe quickly helped the girl up, checking if she was all right as Luffy brushed off the dirt on his cloak. You better keep your promise, Helmeppo. Zoro spat. Of course, the teen laughed. If you can survive for this whole month, I'll definitely set you free. Helmeppo laughed as he walked away with his guards in tow. Zoro hung his head and sighed before noticing a shadow on the ground. He lifted up his head again to see a Marine with a straw hat staring at him. What now? He groaned. You're the best swordsman in East Blue, Luffy asked skeptically. Zoro raised an eyebrow at the unexpected question. What's it to you? You don't look like any of the Marines here. I don't see any swords on you. Luffy stared at Zoro's waist. Zoro rolled his eyes. That Helmeppo bastard took them when he arrested me, of course. You think he'll let me keep them here? How did you end up like this? Luffy scratched his chin, amused. I don't need to tell you, get out of my face. Zoro dropped his head again. I'm looking for people to join my Marine crew. I think a swordsman like you will fit right in. Well then I'm sorry, but you'll have to look elsewhere. Zoro grinned at the Marine. As you can see, I'm a bit tied up at the moment. Shishishishi, you're funny. All right, I've decided. You'll join my crew. Luffy laughed. Zoro's eyes widened. Hey, I never said I'll join. And besides, I'm still stuck here anyway. I can always help free you, Luffy smirked, stepping towards Zoro. Wait, no, stop. Zoro shouted him back. I made a promise to last for a month. If I do, I'm a free man, so I don't need your help. Oh, so how about I wait for you to be released? Will you join then? Luffy grinned foolishly. Zoro sighed in exasperation. No way, I don't want to be a damn Marine. I have my own dreams. Luffy's eyes sparkled at that line. Really? What is it? Luffy rushed up to Zoro and stared at him expectantly, causing the swordsman to recoil back in surprise. Damn it, you're too close. I have no reason to tell you anyway. Now get lost. HMPH, spoil sport. I'll wait for you then. Luffy turned to go. Hey wait, before you go, help me get those rice balls. Zoro gestured with his chin at the mudded rice balls on the ground. You're sure? There's more dirt in it than rice now. Luffy picked one up, waving it at Zoro. I don't care, just give it to me. Luffy shrugged and complied, feeding him one of the rice balls that Zoro greedily swallowed before having a coughing fit. Hey, cough cough, tell the girl that the rice balls were delicious. Luffy grinned. You're a really interesting guy. I definitely want you on my crew. Luffy ran out of the base before Zoro could protest again. He really said that? The girl exclaimed, clearly elated by the news. Yep, he ate everything. Shishishishi. Luffy grinned. Wow, maybe rumors are really just rumors after all. He doesn't seem to be a bad guy at all, Kobe commented. The three of them were seated inside the girl's house, which happens to be a bar. At first, the girl's mother was hesitant in letting them in, seeing as they were Marines, but relented when Luffy told her that they were not part of Helmeppo's group. He isn't. The girl, Rika, insisted. He only got in trouble because he wanted to protect me. Really now? Luffy leaned closer, listening attentively. Helmeppo had this big wolf that he would always bring around town to bully people with. And when the wolf was bullying me, Brother Zoro saved me from it. He's a really good guy. I see. So this kid is abusing his father's power. As a Marine, I will not allow this to continue. Luffy clenched his fist. The door was kicked open without warning as Helmeppo strutted in with his guards. This place is still the same dump as before, he spat, not noticing the trio sitting by the side. He sat down on one of the tables, resting his legs on the table and shouting insults at the poor condition of the bar. Haha, that stupid swordsman, he dared to call me a bastard. I'll show him. Ha, I'll definitely have him executed tomorrow. Luffy stood up and turned to Helmeppo, toppling the chair he was sitting on. Didn't you promise to free him in a month? Helmeppo squinted at the youth. Huh, who the hell are you? You're a Marine from the base, right? You still don't know I've only been joking with him all these while. Only an idiot will believe that. Something snapped in Luffy as he rushed towards Helmeppo and struck him across the face, sending him sprawling onto the floor. Luffy. Kobe pulled Luffy back in a panic. What are you doing? He's still a Marine. Please calm down. Kobe, the Marines is not a place where people can abuse their authority. Luffy glared at Helmeppo. I'm taking Zoro away with me today. Helmeppo held his face where Luffy had punched him as his guards tried to help him up. Who the hell do you think you are? Even my dad has never hit me before. Luffy rolled up his sleeves. Then I'll do it in his stead. My father's the captain of this town, you stupid no-name Marine. He won't let you go with this. Helmeppo pointed an accusing finger at Luffy as he got to his feet. Guards, get him, Helmeppo ordered. But the two Marines stayed still, looking between Helmeppo and Luffy, unsure of themselves. Luffy snorted, arrogant and ignorant. You, Luffy pointed at one of the guards whom stiffened at attention. Go get Zoro's swords and hand it to him. Untie him from his post as well. The guard hesitated and noticed at Helmeppo glaring at him. Now, Luffy ordered, and the guard immediately scampered off to obey. Hey, come back here. Why are you listening to this guy and not me? Helmeppo demanded. And you, Luffy pointed at the other Marine, who also immediately stiffened. Drag him back to his dad and tell him I want a word with him. The Marine was sweating profusely as he immediately hauled a screaming Helmeppo over his shoulder and made a dash for it. Let's go, Kobe. Time to free my first crew member, Luffy grinned. I am the greatest, a Marine said proudly to himself as he stood on top of the Marine base. In front of him, a group of Marines were struggling to raise up a statue that resembled said Marine. He had a metal plate as a jaw and his right hand was replaced with a crude-looking axe. A marine coat that had its sleeves torn off rested on his shoulders, revealing his large, beefy arms. "Father, sir!" Helmeppo and the marine carrying him cried out at the same time as they barged in onto the roof. The marine captain turned to regard the two with critical eyes. "Dad, I want you to kill someone for me. There's someone in town that actually hit me, and my guards actually betrayed me." Helmeppo clutched onto his father's cloak, wailing. "Captain Morgan, sir. There's another marine captain that has asked for your presence." The other marines turned at this, their eyes filled with mild traces of hope. What does he want?" Morgan advanced on the marine. I don't know, sir. He only told me to tell you that." The marine shrunk smaller and smaller as the captain got closer and closer. "Father, why don't you care about me? He hit me. You need to take revenge for me." Helmeppo cried louder, pulling at Morgan's cloak. Morgan turned around to regard the blonde teen with contempt. "Do you know why I never hit you before?" Because I'm your wonderful son." Helmeppo tried. "No." Morgan advanced on Helmeppo. Without warning, his left fist flung forward and punched Helmeppo away. "Because you're a bastard son that's not even worth hitting." Tears streamed down Helmeppo's face as Morgan picked him up by his collar. "Don't misunderstand here. I am the one that is great here, not you." He dropped Helmeppo back onto the floor before turning back to the marine. "And you, did you get rid of that captain?" The marine seemed to be taken aback at this, before shaking his head. "Then you're a traitor. Don't you know there can only be one captain here? And that will only be me. Any other captains that comes here are a threat to my rule and needs to die." As the captain advanced on the marine as he swung his axe by his side, the marine was shivering in fear but dared not move from his spot. "Captain, there's someone untying our captive," a marine shouted. Morgan turned around and walked to the edge of the roof, leaving the marine that just escaped death collapsing onto the floor in relief. Morgan watched as a marine was untying the binds on Zoro, his 3 swords laid down on the ground beside him. "I'm surrounded by traitors. Men, get down there and stop them," Morgan yelled, his face red with anger. Zoro looked questioningly at the marine that was busy untying his bindings. The marine had rushed out of the base carrying his swords and immediately begun untying his bindings with fervor. "What are you doing?" Zoro demanded. "You're going to get into trouble for this." "I know," the marine cried, still trying to untie the ropes as sweat poured down his face in fear. "Then why?" "I only need to last till the end of the month to be free," Zoro asked, as his left arm came free. "You were never going to be freed," the marine cried. "You were planned to be executed tomorrow. There's another marine captain here and he ordered your release once he found out about it. Honestly, no one here likes Morgan, but we are forced to obey only because he's our superior. If someone else with authority comes here and tells me to go against him, I'd gladly do so." Despite his bravado, Zoro could tell the man was shaking in fear, knowing that his life was probably forfeit. A shadow loomed over the both of them as Zoro looked up just in time to see the falling of Morgan's axe. Zoro clenched his teeth as he kicked up one of his swords with his left foot and drew it in one fluid motion, parrying the descending blow of the giant axe with his only free hand. "Impressive. You're not the best swordsman of East Blue for show," Morgan grunted. He glimpsed at the cowering marine, who had already collapsed onto the floor in fear. "As for you, little traitor, I think the death sentence should suit you properly." Morgan raised his axe to strike again, but Zoro stepped in between the two, all 3 of his swords drawn, catching the downward swing of the axe in between the 2 swords in his hands. Morgan raised an eyebrow. "Why would you defend the ones who tied you up in the first place?" "This has nothing to do with that," Zoro sneered, pushing the axe away and causing Morgan to stumble back a few steps. "Have it your way, fool." "Men," Morgan turned to call out the squad of marines that had their rifles held ready. Zoro cursed as he stood between the rifles and the still sprawled marine behind him. "I can't die here, not before I've fulfilled my dream." Hold your fire," a commanding voice boomed. Everyone turned to regard the enraged marine captain that stood at the gates. The air around him was pulsating in waves and the wire gates were creaking under the immense pressure the teen was giving out. Kobe hid behind as Luffy started walking towards the group, fists clenched and eyes burning with rage. "All of you, lower your weapons." The world seemed to shake with each word. The Marines immediately lowered their rifles without hesitation, feeling an immense pressure wash over them. Morgan could feel his right arm shaking from the pulsating waves of haki that Luffy was exuding. "Who are you?" Morgan demanded, his face clenched in anger. "I am Captain Monkey D. Luffy." He stopped just a few feet from Morgan. "Captain Morgan, with my authority, I hereby strip you of your rank and position. You are no longer a Marine." Luffy's voice was deceivingly calm as the rage in his eyes were clear for all to see. "You brat, what right do you have to do that?" Morgan demanded with unrestrained fury. Luffy unfurled a paper from within his coat, showing everyone in the vicinity the official paper that he held. I am charged with the mission and authority to root out and deal with any criminal activity in this vicinity. Luffy glared pointedly at Morgan, lowering his head so that his straw hat obscured a part of his eyes. I have decided that your oppression of this town was deemed worthy as a crime. Give yourself up, Captain Morgan, you insolent brat. Morgan charged towards Luffy without warning, his axe raised in the air to strike him down. Luffy calmly placed the folded paper back into his coat before vanishing and reappearing directly in front of Morgan. Grabbing onto Morgan's left shoulder with his right hand, Luffy brought his knee smashing up into Morgan's chin, cracking the metal plate and sending him flying backwards. The former captain collapsed onto the floor, the whites of his eyes showing. Luffy landed and brushed the dust off his knee, barely a scratch. Zoro stared at Luffy in wonder. How had such a carefree and foolish boy have so much power? Who's next in command? Luffy demanded. A single Marine stepped out immediately before saluting smartly. Commander Ripper reporting, sir. Luffy looked at the man up and down before grinning, all tension disappearing from him. Good, good. I'm placing you in charge of this base, and have someone contact HQ for me to report about this. Luffy pointed down at the prone Morgan. While you're at it, get rid of that disgusting statue too. Luffy stuck his tongue out in disgust at the statue at the rook of the base. Aye, sir. Ripper saluted again with a grin before ordering a few people to carry Morgan back to the base to be detained. Oh, one more thing. Luffy grinned widely, pointing at Kobe who still stood by the gate. That's a new recruit I picked up for you. Be sure to sign him up for me. Ripper looked back at the boy and nodded immediately. Zoro stepped in beside him, his sword sheathed. So Zoro, ready to join my crew. Luffy smirked. Zoro sighed. I told you I have a dream before, didn't I? Luffy's eyes sparkled at this, grasping Zoro by the shoulders firmly. Tell me. Please, 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 please. Geez, I get it. Zoro pushed Luffy off. I want to be the strongest swordsman in the world. That's my dream. And in order to do that, I need to defeat the one that currently holds that title. Dracula Mihawk. I don't suppose you can help me achieve that, can you? Oh, you mean Hockey? Luffy tilted his head. Hockey? Zoro cringed at the name. Yeah, I hung out with him a couple of times when my Gramps was training me. He was kinda cool. I liked his hat. Shishishishi. Luffy grinned. Zoro was left speechless at this. Even if he was a Marine, not everyone gets to meet any of the 7 warlords whenever they wanted to. If you want, I might be able to arrange a meeting between you two. But you must agree to join my crew first. Luffy grinned. You, arg, fine, I'll do it. But don't you dare stand in the way of my ambition, or I'll make sure you die by my sword. Zoro threw up his hands in exasperation. Shishishishi, wouldn't dream of it. After all, an admiral's crew should only have the best. Luffy laughed. An admiral, eh? So that's your goal? Zoro smiled. Luffy nodded and grinned foolishly. Captain Luffy, sir. A Marine ran up to them. In his hands was a baby Den Den Mushi. HQ requested for you. Luffy's demeanor turned serious as he picked up the Den Den Mushi. This is Captain Monkey D. Luffy speaking. Go ahead, headquarters. Captain Luffy, good work on handling Captain Morgan. We've dispatched a ship to pick him up. Thank you. Is there anything else? Yes, a distress call has been received from Orange Town. Apparently some pirates have been spotted in the vicinity. You're not obligated to respond to it, but you're the closest one to the town right now. I understand. I'll head there right away. Luffy nodded. Thank you. HQ out. Luffy passed the Den Den Mushi back and turned to Zoro. You ready? As I'll ever be, Captain. Zoro grinned, already liking his new captain. Straw Hat Marines, mobilize. Zoro tugged at the Marine jacket that he wore. It was a long-sleeve zip jacket that he left open at the front to reveal a white undershirt that had the word Marines emblazoned across the chest. The Marine insignia was also on clear display at the back of the jacket. Luffy sat at the prow of the boat, sea chart in one hand and a compass in another, his prominent Marine coat resting on his shoulders. A pencil wagged up and down between his teeth as Luffy tried to plot a course. So how's the route, Captain? Zoro asked, one hand held firmly on the rudder to ensure they stayed on course. Luffy sighed as he took out the pencil from his mouth and drew a small circle around the map, some ways away from a plot of land and a black dot that marked Orange Town. Honestly, I know crap about navigating. Everyone was too focused on making me physically stronger and told me to leave these kinds of things to my crew. Luffy sighed again. I can only tell that we're around this area. Luffy pointed to the circle he drew. At best, we're 4 to 5 hours away. At worst, probably another day. Zoro rolled his eyes. How are you expecting to survive in the sea if you can't even navigate? Luffy stuck out his tongue. My orders were to patrol the sea, not to investigate specific islands. So I thought I would just let myself drift from place to place. Hehe. Zoro facepalmed. Remind me why I agreed to join you again. Luffy just laughed it off. How's our food supply? Luffy asked, mouth already watering while reaching for the barrels beside Zoro. Zoro held his hand up to Luffy's face and pushed him back. Hold it. You already ate enough for 3 people just barely 2 hours ago. At this rate we won't have enough to last the day. Stingy. Luffy pouted, rubbing his nose. Hey, do you think that kid will be alright? Zoro sighed, making sure Luffy wasn't going to make a lunge for their already dwindling food supply. He'll be fine. Luffy waved his hand nonchalantly. He's a good kid. He'll definitely be a good Marine. Zoro shrugged. After they locked up Morgan, the whole town was thrown into celebration. Commander Ripper had personally oversaw Kobe's enlistment as well as Helmeppo's at Kobe's insistence, claiming that it would serve as a good enough punishment for his previous attitude, though the town was rather disappointed that their saviors were not staying for the celebration. The Marine base immediately provided rations and Luffy's claimed bounty to be stowed away on their boat. With theoretically enough food to last for 10 days and 2.5 million berries richer, the two-man Marine team set off for Orange Town. Zoro quickly found out that the initial estimation of 10 days' worth of food was only 4 days' worth if you had to feed Luffy. To Luffy's annoyance, Zoro made himself the unofficial guard for the barrel of provisions and smacked his captain whenever he tried to take any extra food from him. Luffy's ears pricked up as he heard 3 voices with his observation haki. The inhuman training that Garp had put him through had taught him to maintain his haki at all times with minimal effort. He turned to the direction of the voice, spotting 3 small specks in the horizon trying their best to keep themselves afloat. Zoro, take the oars. There's 3 guys drowning over there. Luffy yelled, pointing in the direction. What? I don't see anything. Zoro squinted his eyes. Just do it, Luffy ordered, prompting Zoro to immediately make a grab for the oars and row as hard as he could. The screaming could finally be heard a few moments later as the 3 men made a beeline for the approaching boat, begging them to let them on. Zoro stopped his rowing and helped haul the 3 soaked sailors on board, grunting as he did so. Hey, thanks for saving us, one of them cried, wringing his shirt dry. Yeah, you guys are lifesavers. A second one chimed in, emptying water out from his shoe. Now hand over your boat. The third pulled out a knife which spurred the other 2 to do the same. Zoro's and Luffy's eyebrows twitched. The 3 introduced themselves as members of the Buggy Pirates and apologized profusely on their knees. All 3 of them had welts and bruises on their face and their hands bound together as 2 of them are now rowing as hard as they could with their hands bound. Please accept our humblest apologies. We didn't know it was the pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro. Nor did we expect to meet such an esteemed figure like a Marine captain out here in these parts. The last pirate had his hands held together in a prayer gesture as he repeatedly bowed his head towards the 2 seated, fuming figures. What the hell happened to you guys? Zoro sighed. Oh, it was so horrible, Zoro-sama. A girl tricked us. She pretended to be in need of help in her little boat. Then she lured us onto her boat before stealing ours and took all our treasure with it. What made it worse was the sudden storm hit us and sunk the boat with us. It was like she planned the whole thing. It was really horrible. Zoro-sama. Luffy and Zoro stared at the 3 incredulously, wondering how they managed to synchronize their explanation with one another, then whether the girl could actually predict the storm to happen at that time. Both of them shaking their heads in disbelief. How far away are we from Orange Town? Luffy sighed, uninterested in their constant groveling. Oh, not far at all, Captain Luffy-sama. It's only an hour away. In fact, you can actually see it on the horizon. The pirate pointed at the speck of land in the horizon. Luffy sighed again. Listen well then, once we reach the island, I will be apprehending this buggy captain of yours, so if you don't want to be involved, grab a boat and leave. Understand? Oh yes, certainly, Captain Luffy-sama. In a little over an hour, their boat was securely tied to the harbor as they disembarked onto the deserted town. Luffy spots a huge pirate ship anchored nearby. A ridiculously huge circus tent was pitched below the main mast. That's Buggy's ship all right. Zoro nodded towards the ship. I once thought of going after his head, but never actually found him. Where is he? Luffy turned to the shaking pirates. We set up camp at the top of the bar over there. The pirate pointed a finger at the barely visible circus top jutting out among the town buildings. Can we go now? The pirates looked ready to piss their pants. Zoro glanced at Luffy, who gave him a nod. He unsheathed his blade and before the pirates could flinch, swiftly brought his blade down in 3 consecutive strikes, severing the ropes around their wrists. Not waiting for another second, the 3 pirates took to their heels, screaming. Zoro sheathed his blade and entered the ghost town alongside Luffy. Before they could take 10 steps in, a ray of light flashed through the town, spewing dust and debris in all directions. What? Both men gasped, watching as the dust cleared to reveal a large portion of the town has been flattened. The buildings looked like a giant boulder had bulldozed its way through the town in an attempt to reach the sea, flattening most of the town in the process. What happened? Zoro gaped, jaws slack in confusion. I don't know, but the light came from over there. Luffy pointed to the bar where the pirates supposedly were. It must be their doing then. We have no time to lose if we want to protect the rest of the town. Zoro tied his bandana around his head, eyes serious. There's someone coming this way too. Luffy turned, hearing footsteps coming from an alley. Hold it, you thief. A woman burst through the alley and ran straight into them, knocking Zoro sprawling onto the floor. Watch it, Zoro growled, standing up and dusting off his jacket. The woman cursed under her breath as she massaged her head, where she had hit Zoro. She was about to run again when 3 pirates ran out from the alley, swords drawn and panting. Stop right there, you thieving cat. Don't make this harder than it has to be. The woman clutched the paper she held in her hands closer as she backed away, noticing the other 2 standing beside her for the first time. Hey, who are you guys? One of the pirates pointed a sword at Zoro. Hey, these guys are Marines. Another gasped, spotting the Marine insignia both of them wore. The girl recollected her thoughts before giving the 2 Marines a grin. Hey, thanks boss, I'll leave these guys to you. She took to her heels before anyone else to react. No way, she's a Marine. That explains everything. We'll finish up these guys here then gut her later. All 3 pirates snarled, advancing on the 2 stationary Marines. Allow me, Captain. Zoro unsheathed his swords. Onigiri. Zoro slashed through the 3 pirates, who immediately collapsed on the floor, each one bearing a single slash mark. Zoro swiped his blade to clean of the blood before sheathing each of his blades. Wow, you guys took them down easily. Both men looked up to spot the girl from before sitting at the edge of the roof. Are you guys Marines? Who are you and what are you doing here? Luffy demanded, clearly unhappy with the stunt she pulled on them. The girl hopped off the roof to land in front of him, waving her hands in a placating gesture. Sorry. It was just that those pirates have been chasing me for quite a while and I panicked. She stretched out her hand to Luffy. My name is Nami. I'm the best navigator you'll ever find. Luffy looked at the hand then at her, raising an eyebrow before shaking it. Captain Monkey D. Luffy of the Marines. Are you the one that sent the distress call? Nami shook her head. That would be the other villagers. I was only passing through. And by passing through you mean stealing from pirates, eh? Zoro eyed the map that was clearly in Nami's hand. Well, they're pirates anyway, right? It's not so bad if you're stealing from criminals. Nami tried, fidgeting under Zoro's stare. 2 wrongs don't make a right, Zoro commented, unmoving. Luffy stepped in between them. All right. We're only here for Buggy, nothing more. You can go if you wish. Hey wait, how about I help you guys? Nami suggested, suddenly very enthusiastic. Help us capture Buggy. Zoro sneered, eyeing the girl. Yeah, I can say that I mutinied on you guys and captured you as an offering to Buggy so that I can join his crew. Then when they're drunk celebrating, I can release you guys to capture the intoxicated pirates. Easy right? Luffy and Zoro looked at each other before turning back to her. There's something else you're after, spill it. Zoro growled. Seeing that she can't fool the 2 Marines, she smiled sheepishly. Well, I would prefer if you 2 wouldn't mind me liberating some of their assets. Still after money, huh? Zoro smirked. Nami shrugged. I can't say I don't love having more money than I can spend in my pockets. Did you trick 3 pirates at sea before you got here? Luffy asked. Nami tilted her head and pretended to think. I may have, but what's it to you? So you can predict the weather. Luffy watched Nami carefully. Nami shook her hands quickly. Oh no, not really at least. I can just tell the weather patterns more easily than others. All right then, deal, but if you try anything. Luffy held up a finger as a warning. Zoro's eyes widened. Captain, you can't be serious. We don't even need her help. We'll just plow right through them. True, but I'm hungry, and I don't want to fight while I'm hungry. Luffy groaned, rubbing his belly. Both Zoro and Nami stared at Luffy in disbelief. The roof of the bar was in disarray. A few pirates were scurrying about the place in what seemed to be a celebration put on hold. There were barrels of alcohol and tables of food strewn around the place. The tension in the air was so tight it could almost be cut. Most of the pirates were gathered in front of the big tent that housed their captain, Buggy, now sitting on his throne and tapping his right hand on the armrest impatiently. In front of him stood the thief that his men had a ridiculous amount of trouble capturing, and tied up beside her were her boss and associate. Since I'm sick and tired of working for the Marines and not even getting a decent pay for all my work, I thought that becoming a pirate and joining you guys would be so much better. Nami flashed her best I'm so totally telling the truth smile. So you really turned against them, eh? Buggy looked at the 2 bound Marines with disdain. One was nodding off to sleep while the other just glared at everyone that dared to make eye contact. He stood up from his throne, advancing on the 2 Marines sitting cross-legged beside Nami, ignoring Zoro's glare. Ha, so you 2 idiots got betrayed, eh? Joy ha ha ha. What a bunch of fools. Buggy laughed heartily as the rest of his crew joined in. Hey wait. Buggy finally noticed Zoro's waist. 3 swords? You wouldn't happen to be pirate hunter Zoro, would you? Buggy glared. Zoro smirked, shrugging. I quit being a bounty hunter some time ago. I'm a Marine now. Buggy growled. Men, take his swords away, and bring more rope to bind him. Zoro scowled at this, standing up suddenly, unfazed by the number of men around him. You touch my swords and I'll make sure none of you touches anything again. Nami smacked him hard on the head, yelling, what the hell are you doing? Can't you see there's way more pirates than you? You don't stand a chance. Zoro glared at the girl while Buggy laughed again. You truly are one of us now, girl. Zoro gritted his teeth. I don't care. I already suffered the embarrassment of losing my swords a few days ago, and I'm not going to let it happen again. Why you? Nami began to raise her hand again. Zoro, Luffy finally spoke up. Everyone turned to regard the Marine captain that had been silent all this while. He grinned at Zoro. Do whatever you want. Zoro grinned back. With pleasure, Captain. In a flash, the ropes that bound his upper body were severed and his swords were unsheathed. Change of plans, Nami. We're taking them down now. Zoro smirked. So you lied to us. Buggy glared pointedly at Nami, who was beginning to sweat. She started to mouth an excuse but felt a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Luffy standing beside her, bindings already undone. Relax, Nami. We got this. Luffy smiled reassuringly. Hey Zoro. Yes, Captain. You handle these guys first. I'm going to take some of their food. Without waiting for a reply, he walked off towards the closest table piled with food. Zoro only grinned at this as he glared down the pirates surrounding them, all with weapons drawn. Of course, Captain. Without any warning, he lunged towards the closest pirate, already cutting him and sending him sprawling on the ground. In unison, the pirates shouted a battle cry and charged at Zoro, only to be mowed down in a flurry of blades. A few of them went after Nami, now knowing she had no intention of joining them in the first place. Nami muttered a curse under her breath as she assembled her staff that was hidden underneath her skirt, trying her best to fend off the furious pirates. Captain, a swordsman rolled out beside Buggy on a unicycle. He was wearing a checkered scarf and baggy pants with only a long overcoat to cover his torso. I can handle these two by myself. Cabaji. Buggy regarded the swordsman. He nodded and jerked his head at Luffy, who was busy shoveling food into his mouth. But get him first. He's getting on my nerves. Cabaji charged towards Luffy, his two sabers poised to strike at his back. When he is within striking distance, 3 swords flashed in front of him, parrying his attacks. Zoro stood in front of him, both their swords locked in position. Would you mind not disturbing my captain while he's eating? Zoro grunted. Cabaji grinned. It's an honor to cross swords with you, Roronoa. I can't say the same to you, you circus freak. Zoro grunted, pushing Cabaji away from him. Leave him to me, boys. I want to fight him. Cabaji shouted, fully concentrating on Zoro now. Zoro stuck both of his swords in the ground and tied his bandana around his head before picking his swords up again. Both swordsmen charged at each other, striking both of their swords at the same time. Before Zoro could push away, Cabaji pulled down his scarf and blew a gout of blame at him. Acrobat technique, fire trick. Zoro leaped backwards as he tried to avoid the flames, shielding his face with his left hand. Cabaji took the opportunity and delivered a right kick to Zoro's abdomen, pushing him onto the floor. Cabaji charged at Zoro again, his swords lunging towards him. Zoro grunted as he got up from the ground, parrying his 2 sword lunges away and delivering a satisfying headbutt to Cabaji's face, sending him off his unicycle. You dirty bastard, Cabaji screamed. Says the guy with the circus tricks. Zoro smirked, charging once again at Cabaji. Murder missed attack, Cabaji cried, as he swung his sword on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Zoro stopped at the edge of the cloud, swords held ready. Without warning, Cabaji appeared from within the cloud, swords held on his right and slashing towards Zoro. Zoro blocked it with both his swords, planning to cut him with the sword in his mouth. Cabaji let go of the sword in his left hand and threw a bunch of dirt that he had hit at Zoro's face. You asshole. Zoro winced in pain as he stepped back, trying to get the dirt out from his eyes. Cabaji did not lose the opportunity to stab his sword towards Zoro, who barely managed to deflect it at the last second. I'm tired of this. You call yourself a swordsman and yet you resort to these petty tricks. Zoro fumed, finally regaining his full sight. I'll do anything it takes to win, fool. Cabaji grinned. Come to my face and say it. I dare you. Zoro grunted, settling into a stance. Cabaji charged one more time at him, swords held by his side prepared to slash. Just as he was reaching his target, Zoro lashed out with all 3 swords. Onigiri. 3 slashes marked itself on Cabaji as he passed by Zoro. Impossible. You're only Marines. Cabaji gasped before collapsing on the floor. That's enough, Roronoa Zoro. A man shouted, causing said swordsman to turn to face him. A man with his hair styled to look like he had bare ears on top of his head was standing beside Nami, who was now tied up and kneeling on the floor. A huge lion stood behind her, a paw on top of her head, not allowing her to rise. Move another step and she gets it. The man grinned victoriously. Joy ha ha ha. Well done, Moji. Hold that bitch there. Buggy laughed. Zoro was about to move before the lion pushed Nami's head even lower, growling at Zoro. Seeing that he had control over the situation again, Buggy laughed as his man brought in a cannon. Since you guys had pissed me off so much, I'll give you guys the honor of death with my best weapon. Men, load in the buggy ball. A black cannonball with their pirate Jolly Roger was loaded into the cannon, A pirate immediately lit the fuse and the cannon was pointed at the town. To demonstrate its power, men, fire the buggy ball. Nami watched in horror. A huge flash of white light emanated from the cannon towards the town. When the light finally dimmed, the buildings that once stood tall and proud were reduced to rubble within the cannon's aim. Joy ha ha ha. Be proud you made me use this on you, you filthy Marines. Buggy laughed as they redirected the cannon to point at the stationary Marines. So that's what you used to destroy the town earlier. Zoro glared at Buggy. Joy ha ha ha. Of course, and now I'm going to use it on you. Buggy laughed maniacally. Run, you idiots. Why are you risking your lives for me? Nami cried, only for Moji to smack her across her face to shut her up. Oi, oi, Captain, this doesn't look good. Zoro sweated. Relax, swallow. Luffy waved his hand nonchalantly, talking even with his mouth still full of food. Jwas thrust MWE. Zoro looked at him, unconvinced. If you're so sure, Captain, fire the buggy ball. Buggy cried as the fuse was lit. No, Nami cried as the cannon was fired. A blinding light flashed towards the two Marines, only to be abruptly dissipated. The smoke cleared to reveal a Straw Hat Marine chomping down on some food as he held onto the cannonball with his right hand. Everyone's eyes popped out and their jaws reached the ground. WHHHAA. Everyone screamed in unison. Swallowing his food, Luffy let out a contented belch as he let the bomb drop on the floor, letting it smolder. That was some good food, he grinned. Zoro, he appeared in front of Moji, his face impassive. You dared to hit her. The air was cackling as Luffy delivered a punch to Moji's face, sending him flying off the roof into the street below. How dare you, you filthy Marine. Richie, Buggy called out to the lion. Kill that thief. But Richie stayed still. In fact, he stayed so still people wondered if he was still alive. His sweat was pouring down his face like a waterfall as Luffy advanced on him. You will let her go. It wasn't a request, nor a demand. Luffy was commanding him to do as he said. Richie slowly lifted his paw off Nami's head and stepped aside, all the while cowering in fear of this Straw Hat boy. Luffy stuck his right index finger out, pointed it at Nami's bindings. Shigen Rankyaku, jabbing his finger forward. A small bullet of air pressure sliced cleanly through the rope, not touching Nami at all. Nami just stared incredulously at Luffy as her bindings fell free beside her. I'll only say this once, Buggy the clown, give up before you get hurt. Fat chance. I'll take you on myself, you damn Marine. Buggy cried, bringing out knives from under his cloak. Although rather uneasy about this Marine captain's sudden display of power, Buggy refused to bow down to him. I'll have to take him seriously from the start, Buggy decided. Bara Festival. Buggy's body separated into many different parts and started flying around the place. Nami and Zoro was shocked at this display, but Luffy just smirked. So you ate a devil fruit, huh? Indeed, I ate the Bara fruit. I have the ability to split my body into different sections. I cannot be cut. Scared now, Marine? Buggy laughed. Not at all. You look ridiculous, like your big nose. Luffy grinned. Every Buggy pirate that heard that immediately went into a panic mode and backed off as far away as they could from Luffy. Hey, what's up with you guys? Luffy looked at the pirates quizzically. Ew, what did you say about my nose? Buggy's body was trembling. I said it was big. Luffy raised an eyebrow. NOO, he hates people talking about his nose. Every Buggy pirate screamed in unison. I'll kill you for that, you confounded Marine. Buggy's body began spinning wildly around Luffy like a miniature tornado. Nami held onto Luffy's cloak, watching in fear as the tornado got smaller and smaller around them, closing in for the kill. Relax, Nami, I'll protect you. The Marines always protect the innocent. Luffy grinned, keeping his eyes on the tornado of body parts. Surprise stab. A hand holding a knife flew towards Luffy from behind his head, only to be backhanded away back into the tornado. It's not much of a surprise if you actually yell it out, Luffy grinned. This time, another hand flew out without warning and went straight for Nami. She screamed, but Luffy managed to kick that hand away as well, targeting bystanders now. That's not very nice, Buggy. Luffy clucked his tongue at him. Shut up. I'm a pirate. I don't play nice. Buggy yelled back. At once, Buggy flung all of his airborne body parts at Luffy, aiming to distract him while the hands that held his knives moved in for the kill. With observation hacky, Luffy noticed the trajectory of the knives were not headed for him. He grit his teeth in anger as he pulled Nami away from the knives and shielded her from the crashing body parts. Enough. Your fight is with me. Stop dragging her into it. Luffy growled. Never. She stole my map and tried to trick me. I'm never forgiving her. Buggy growled as he tried to stab her again. Hold your breath and close your eyes, Luffy whispered, gripping tighter on her. Nami didn't hesitate and did as she was told. Zoro. Luffy reappeared in front of Zoro with Nami, dodging through the knives and body parts. He deposited her beside him. Nami still slightly dazed from the sudden acceleration. Protect her. Luffy turned back to face the increasingly frustrated Buggy. Of course, Captain. Zoro grinned, gripping his swords. I won't forgive you for hurting the innocent. Turn yourself in or I'll make you. Luffy glared hard at Buggy. Try me. Buggy floated a few feet away from Luffy. Shigen Renkyaku. Luffy punched his finger forward and sent a bullet of compressed air at Buggy without warning, piercing through one of his hands. ARRGGHH. You bastard. Buggy screamed, clutching his hand. Last warning, Luffy glared, the shadow of his hat covering his eyes. Never. Bara party. Every single body part began flinging itself towards Luffy. Luffy held his hat with one hand and appeared in front of Buggy's floating head. Before Buggy could even blink, a fist materialized in between his eyes, sending his head crashing back into his tent. The other body parts immediately slumped onto the floor as Buggy lost consciousness. All the other pirates cowered in fear at the Marine captain, flinching as he pointed a finger at them. I want you guys to bag all the treasure you currently have and bring them here. Once you're done, I want all of you off the island within 10 seconds. Anyone still here by then will be arrested or beaten up. Probably both. All of them scurried off to obey. Luffy grinned at the retreating pirates before turning to Zoro. His blades were already sheathed and his bandana tied to his arm. Zoro, help me tie Buggy up. We'll leave him for the transportation guys. Luffy pulled out his den mushi, dialing the number for HQ as Zoro found some rope and proceeded to gather up the body parts. Headquarters, Captain Monkey D. Luffy reporting in from Orange Town. Receiving loud and clear, Captain. What's the situation there? Pirate Captain Buggy the Clown was found terrorizing the town, but I already dealt with him. Send in a transport team for pickup. Over. Aye, sir. Thanks for the good work. HQ out. Luffy pocketed the den mushi just as the pirates returned with bags of gold before turning on their heels and ran back to their ship, carrying any passed-out crew members with them. Luffy grinned at Nami, who was staring at the bags of gold uneasily. Hey, I'll give you those if you agree to become my navigator. What? Nami stared at him in disbelief. I'm gathering my own marine crew to take on the New World criminals, and we're sorely missing in the navigation department. We can use someone like you. Luffy smiled sheepishly. Nami held her head down. I'm flattered, but I can't. I still have some unfinished business I need to deal with at home. Luffy frowned, noticing her depression. Does it have something to do with how you're clamoring so much after money? Nami hesitated, but nodded in the end. Luffy just sighed before tossing 2 bags of gold to her, leaving one last bag behind. Take these. Nami looked at Luffy in shock. Are you sure? You don't have to. It's fine. Just take it as an apology for getting you involved. I can already claim the 15 million bounty from Buggy, so I'm not in need of those. Luffy nodded towards the bags. What about that one? Nami pointed at the last bag. Luffy shrugged. The town needs to be repaired. This will act as their funds for it, I guess. Nami nodded understandingly, still staring at the 2 bags. Zoro reappeared out of the tent with a satisfied smirk. All done, Captain. I wrote a note to tell the guys not to untie the body parts too. Luffy peeked in the tent to see Buggy's head tied to the center pole of the tent with his bundle of body parts below. Shishishishi, that should keep him there until the boys come. We should head out soon. I don't want to have to answer the locals when they find out half their town got destroyed by these pirates. Luffy laughed. Wait, Nami made a grab for Luffy, stopping him in his tracks. You see, these 2 bags are too heavy for me to carry by myself, so if you 2 gentlemen can help me carry them, I wouldn't mind following you guys for a while. Nami smiled sweetly. TCH, damn witch is only in it for the gold, aren't you? Zoro remarked, turning away to walk back to their boats. Luffy grinned at her. Where's your hometown? Konomi Islands, she grinned back. Well, perfect. That's one of our stops too. We can escort you there. Maybe help you finish your business too so you can join us. Luffy laughed. Nami paled a little at this but kept her smile. It's a deal then. Luffy shook Nami's hands energetically, welcoming his temporary navigator. Zoro stifled a yawn as he was appointed the rudder man again. Both Nami and Luffy were sitting at the prow of the boat beside each other as Nami drilled in whatever she knew on navigation into him. He grinned as Luffy tried his hardest to learn everything that Nami was teaching him to avoid another beating from her. She didn't really take kindly to Luffy's antics, unfortunately. Zoro smirked as he recalled how she raged over the fact that Luffy didn't have a proper ship and crew despite being a Marine captain. She got even more angry when he had not allowed her to continue using the larger boat she acquired from the Buggy pirates, as it had their Jolly Roger on the sails and thus had to move the treasures she stole from them to their smaller boat. Now the already cramped boat became even more cramped as their bags of treasures had to be deposited in the middle of the boat, leaving barely enough room for 3. It was a wonder the boat was still afloat. Zoro glanced at the last barrel of rations worriedly, since they were in a hurry to leave before the locals came. They hadn't had the time to gather extra rations and had to make do with what was already on the pirates' boat at that time to restock, which was a rather pitiful amount even without considering how much Luffy eats. Once Luffy had revealed his rather pathetic navigation skills, Nami had brought upon herself to drill into him what she knew, seeing as how it was partly his job as the captain after all. That turned into an entertaining impromptu skit for Zoro as he watched his captain smacked repeatedly on the head for every glaring blunder he made, and Nami waving her hands in the air in exasperation at his cluelessness. Really, what did they even teach you in your time in the Marines? Nami yelled, finally giving up on actually making him a proficient navigator. How to fight. Luffy tried, his hand rubbing his head to ease the pain of multiple smacks Nami had inflicted upon him. Is there nothing else? Nami growled, clearly frustrated by how strong he is in a fight but apparently clueless in almost everything else. Well, everything else that's theoretical I had to teach myself since no one would teach me that. All of my trainers said I could rely on my crew for that and for me to only focus on fighting. Luffy smiled sheepishly. So you actually learned the basics of navigation by yourself? I'm rather surprised, Zoro commented, clearly not expecting him to be the bookish type. It was more of a passing hobby, really. They just had maps and charts lying around, and sometimes I would watch the Marine navigators work from time to time. Luffy confessed. How long have you been a Marine? Nami asked, putting away her maps and charts. About 4 years now, Luffy beamed proudly. You got this strong in just 4 years, Zoro spluttered. He himself had trained his whole life to reach the level he is right now, and the Marines managed to churn out this monster within 4 years. I was trained by the best. Luffy grinned proudly, remembering his teachers. That still does not explain how you stopped a freaking cannonball with your bare hands. Nami yelled at him. Oh, that's normal. I had to throw cannonballs with my my teacher with our hands. He was way better at it than I am. Luffy waved nonchalantly. Your trainer made you practice throwing cannonballs with your bare hands? Both of them yelled at him. It was more of a sport actually. We just competed who could throw faster and further, Luffy confessed, scratching his head in embarrassment. Who is the guy? Nami asked, eyes wide. I'm not supposed to tell. Luffy turned his head and started whistling, sweat dripping down his face. Flashback. Luffy, remember this well. Garp grabbed Luffy by his shoulders, forcing him to face him. It was the day that he was supposed to set off after 3 years of training, a few hours away from Fuchsia village. Both of them were in Garp's quarters where they had shared the room on the voyage. I have many enemies out there, Luffy. And even though I don't doubt your strength to defend yourself, I want you to be safe. Do not, I repeat, do not tell anyone you meet that I am your grandfather, nor are you Dragon's son. Do you understand me? Luffy saw the seriousness in his grandfather's eyes, the usual jovialness and cheerfulness gone. Luffy could only nod dumbly. If my enemies find out you're my grandson, they will try to hurt me by hurting you. So whatever happens, don't tell anyone outside of the Marines. I know you're getting your own crew, but don't tell them either unless necessary. Understood? Yes, Grandpa. Luffy nodded again. Good. Garp's face returned back to his usual cheerfulness. Now come on. Don't show such a scary face, you lousy brat. Your journey begins today. It's time to see what my grandson can do. Garp shouted proudly, contradicting his earlier statements. It must be someone famous, right? Zoro smirked, noticing Luffy's hesitation and his increasing nervousness. I don't know. Luffy sweated more profusely and whistled louder. Nami was about to ask again when Zoro caught her eye and shook his head slowly. It's not something we need to know after all. Besides, everyone has their secrets. Zoro grinned. Luffy immediately let out the breath he was holding and relaxed immediately. The two men did not notice Nami stroking her left shoulder carefully as Zoro said that. Anyway, we have a bigger problem right now. Zoro tapped on the barrel beside him with the hilt of his sword. We're critically low on supplies, and if we don't find somewhere to stop soon, we're gonna have a big problem. That's not a problem, Nami smiled. There's a place called Syrup Village about 2 hours sail away that we can resupply. We should also see if we can get a better ship there as well. All three were in agreement for the stop. The three landed their small boat at one of the beaches of the island, with Zoro grounding their boat on the beach. The beach was enclosed by 2 small cliffs with a path cut in between them. Nami was scrutinizing the map she held in her hand and pointed to the path in between the 2 cliffs. That path should lead us directly to the village. I'm pretty sure there's. Who dares intrude on my island? A loud booming voice echoed from the forests on the cliffs. All 3 of them turned towards the source of the voice to see no one there. Who are you? Show yourself, Nami shouted towards the forest. I am the great pirate, Captain Usopp. I have claimed this island as my own, so do not take another step into this island. I have 8 million men at my disposal. Leave now at once. The voice boomed again. Captain Usopp. 8 million men. Luffy's eyes popped out. He reached for his den mushi. I need to report this to HQ. The situation here is more serious than I thought. Idiot. Nami smacked him on the head. Of course he's lying. She found out. A man, presumably Usopp, stood up from the edge of the cliff without warning. He had a greenish-yellow bandana tied around black curly hair and a pair of goggles strapped over his head. A white sash was secured around his waist over his brown overalls, and a light brown sling bag was slung on his left hip. His most noticeable feature was his exceptionally long and thin nose. Huh, so it's just an idiot, huh? Zoro smirked at him. Usopp noticeably gulped as he tried to compose himself. All right. I may have lied about the 8 million man, but I still have a huge number of followers. A few flags appeared in the forest and began waving around. Wow, wait, there's only 3 guys, aren't there? Luffy raised an eyebrow. He found out. 3 kids stood up from the bushes with flags in their hands and immediately took to their heels. Hey, don't abandon me, the long-nosed man shouted after the kids. He cursed under his breath as they didn't even bother to look back. He drew out a slingshot from his bag and turned back to the 3 still standing at the beach. Even if I don't have that many followers, I'm still the great. Wait, you guys are Marines. Usopp gasped. Took you long enough, Zoro rolled his eyes. So you're a pirate that took over this island, huh? I guess I'll just have to arrest you. Luffy pulled up his sleeves. Wait. I lied about that. I'm not a pirate. Usopp panicked, stretching his palms in front of him, trying to placate him. Oh, really? Okay then. Luffy lowered his sleeves again. He's too trusting. Both Nami and Zoro's sweat dropped. What are you Marines doing here? Usopp asked, scratching his head. We're in need of some supplies. Don't suppose you know the way to the village? Nami raised an eyebrow. Oh, of course. This is my hometown. Tell you guys what? As an apology for just now, I'll even treat you guys to a meal. It's all on me, what do you say? The long-nosed man offered. Before Nami and Zoro could even blink, Luffy was already jumping around in joy. Yeah, I want meat. Lots of meat. The man introduced himself as Usopp of Syrup Village and had them seated at a table in one of the taverns within the village. While the other 2 tried to be as civil as possible, Luffy had went ahead to order the most food and proceeded to devour his food without hesitation. Usopp did not seem to mind, however. So what were you doing at the beach, Usopp? Luffy asked between chomping down on his food. It's nothing, really. Usopp scratched his head, seemingly embarrassed. There have been instances of pirates roaming around these parts, so I, sort of, lie to any newcomers that a pirate has already taken over the island to scare them off. Usopp smiled sheepishly. Well, you better work on that lying of yours. Zoro smirked at him before sipping his sake. Well, I've honestly never been that great of a liar myself. Usopp chuckled. I'm not really strong and neither is anyone else on this island. The only thing I'm actually good at is shooting at things with my slingshot. So I just saw lying as the way to protect my village from pirates. That's rather noble of you. I misjudged you, Nami remarked sincerely. Oh, it's fine. The only thing I can actually boast proudly of is my sharpshooting skills. Usopp sighed. Aren't Usopp's kid. Luffy muttered offhandedly while his mouth was still full, spewing food on the table. Don't talk with your mouth full. Nami yelled at him, smacking him on the head again. Wait, you know my dad? Usopp gasped. Oh yeah, he's part of Shanks' crew, right? They came to my village a few years ago. He's a really funny guy. Luffy finally swallowed his food. So he's a really great pirate then. Usopp had a hopeful look in his eyes, gripping the table firmly. For sure, he was the best sharpshooter I ever saw. Even better than most of the sharpshooters I've seen in the Marines. Luffy grinned. So it's true, my dad really is a great pirate. Usopp was smiling uncontrollably. I've always wanted to be a great pirate like my dad. One day, I'll set out to sea too and follow in his footsteps. Usopp fell silent as soon as he remembered who the 3 people around him were. I was just joking. I would never be. So is that your dream? Luffy's eyes were sparkling as he held onto Usopp's shoulders. Usopp didn't even know what to make of his reaction. To become a great pirate like your dad. That's so cool. Luffy beamed and the rest could swear they saw sparkles around him. To be honest, my dream is really to become a great warrior of the sea. The pirate thing is just something I took up after my dad, Usopp confessed, embarrassed. That's so cool. Luffy was shining even brighter now. Nami face-palmed at the sight while Zoro just continued to drown in his sake. By the way, Usopp, don't suppose you know if there's a place around here that we can get our hands on a ship, do you? Nami asked after Luffy finally calmed down. Oh, well, there is a ship in the village, but it belongs to the owner of the mansion. Usopp scratched his chin. You mean the big house on top of the hill? Nami leaned forward, propping her head on her hand. Yep, it's just outside the village and owned by a young lady. Her parents passed away some time ago and left the mansion to her. Unfortunately, she has a rather weak body and has to stay in bed most of the time. Usopp nodded sagely. Oh, maybe we can ask her for it then. Luffy chuckled, already getting up. Usopp seemed a bit uneasy at this declaration but held his tongue as the whole group left the tavern together and headed towards the mansion. When they were about halfway up, Usopp rushed in front of them suddenly. Wait guys, I just remembered something. The lady isn't at home today. Hey, Luffy groaned. Oh well, that can't be helped. We'll just take a look at the ship then. No wait, Usopp stopped them again. She left on the ship to take a ride. Yeah, that's right. so you might as well come back tomorrow. Both Nami and Zoro stared at Usopp incredulously, not understanding why he would lie to stop them from going to the mansion now. Oh, that's too bad then. I guess we'll stay at the village today, guys. Luffy grabbed both Nami's and Zoro's hands, pulling them along with him back to the village. But Luffy, Nami began. Wait, Captain. Haze, Zoro protested. Luffy turned to both of them and gave them a look that told them he knew, instantly shutting down all protests before turning back again. Usopp had watched them leave before turning back and sprinting towards the mansion. So why do you think he lied to us? Nami peeked out from the tree nearby, watching Usopp running towards the mansion. Something fishy's going on. What do we do, Captain? Zoro looked at Luffy, sitting among the branches of the tree. I say we go ahead to the mansion and see what we can find. Luffy hopped down from the tree, his eyes colder than normal. I have a feeling there's more to this lady's mansion than he let up. Well, the whole place is walled up. How do we get in? Nami asked, staring at the imposing steel gate that barred the way into the mansion. The three were standing in front of the mansion. No one else was in sight. We knock, of course, Luffy deadpanned, as though it was the most obvious thing to do, reaching out to a knocker by the side of the gate. Nami grabbed onto Luffy's wrist before he could reach it. Wait, Luffy, what if there's something going on inside the mansion? Like pirates taking over it? I don't think we should just go in like this. We'll just cut them up. Zoro grinned, his right hand already on his swords. Relax, Nami. We can handle anything that comes. Luffy smiled reassuringly. Nami just sighed at the two before letting go of his hand, allowing him to knock loudly on the gate. The metallic sound echoed loudly through the mansion grounds. They only had to wait for a few moments before the door of the main building was flung open. A tall, thin man wearing a butler uniform with round-framed glasses approached the gate with light steps, constantly adjusting his glasses with his palm. I am Cladorn, the caretaker for this mansion. May I ask what you Marines want with us? He asked coolly, his eyes scrutinizing over the three visitors. I am Captain Monkey D. Luffy. I want to have a talk with this mansion's owner. Lead us to her. Luffy seemed to be glaring at the caretaker. Denied. My lady is resting right now. She has no time for people like you. Please leave this place at once. Cladorn adjusted his glasses again, making no move to open the gate. I am not asking. Mr. Caretaker, I have the authority to demand a meeting with your mistress right now, and I am demanding you lead us to her. Luffy's voice quivered, not from fear but barely controlled anger. Both Nami and Zoro looked at each other and wondered why their captain was getting so worked up over the caretaker's refusal to let them meet his mistress. Do not lie to me, Marine. You're a mere captain. You shouldn't hold such authority. Cladorn glared back at Luffy, his hands held behind his back. Luffy pulled out the paper his grandfather had given him, opening it up for the caretaker to see. I am under orders to patrol around this area with the authority to deal with any criminal activity as I see fit within this region. I am currently suspecting that the inhabitants of this mansion are involved in criminal activities, and I will take appropriate action unless you lead me to your mistress. Luffy's glare gave Cladorn no room for protests, and the caretaker could only grit his teeth as he unlocked the gate for the three to enter. He had a scowl on his face as he led them past the main doorway and down a short corridor to his lady's room. The sounds of talking and laughter could be heard from inside. Cladorn's scowl became deeper as he opened the door without knocking to confront the intruder that was talking to his mistress from outside the window. What's going on here? He demanded as he swung open the door. Usopp froze as though he was a deer caught in the headlights, while a young girl who was sitting on the bed turned to face the caretaker. Cladorn, Usopp is just telling me stories about his adventures. The lady tried to placate the caretaker. More like lies. No doubt. Mistress Kaya, I already told you it's not good for you to associate yourself with such uncouth people, especially a son of a pirate scum like this man here. Cladorn scoffed. Usopp gritted his teeth but held his tongue, noticing the three people behind him. Cladorn, who are these people? Kaya pointed at the three behind him, finally noticing them. Cladorn adjusted his spectacles again with his palm, stepping aside to allow them into the room. They're Marines on patrol. They said they wanted to have a word with you. Oh, what can I help you with? Kaya lifted an eyebrow. Actually, Luffy stepped towards her bed, glancing at Usopp, who now hung his head low, unable to meet his eye. We're friends of Usopp here. He told us that you had a ship and were looking to ask if we could somehow obtain it from you. Friends of Usopp. Kaya looked incredulously at Luffy, switching to look at Usopp. Well, he knows my father. Usopp scratched his head, unsure of what Luffy wanted. Yep, and his father is the crew member of a famous Yonko. He's definitely not a pirate scum. Luffy grinned as Usopp glanced wide-eyed at Luffy. Even so, pirates are still pirates. That still doesn't change the fact that he's still a pirate's bastard son. Cladorn remarked coldly, not even acknowledging Usopp. Cladorn, that's enough. Apologize to Usopp. Kaya glared at her caretaker, only to receive a sigh from him. Mistress Kaya, scum like him is not worth apologizing for, especially when all pirates care about are pillaging and ruining lives. After your parents passed away, I promised to them that I would do my best to keep you safe. This pirate here could be plotting to get rid of you in order to get your riches. I define. Cladorn, that's enough out of you, Kaya shouted suddenly, cutting him off. Usopp was barely restraining his anger as he clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Before the situation could escalate further, Luffy coughed to break the tension. I'm sorry, Miss Kaya. We'll come back some other time if that's convenient for you. We have overstayed our welcome. Usopp, come with us. I have more things to tell you about your father. Usopp relaxed his fist before sparing one last glare at Cladorn, stomping away from the mansion grounds. We'll take our leave. Nami bowed to Kaya before leaving the room with the two guys. The trio reunited with Usopp outside of the mansion grounds and walked in silence away from the mansion. They stopped under the tree that they were hiding in before when Usopp tried to discourage them from going to the mansion. I'm sorry about lying to you guys. Usopp bowed his head to them in an apology. It's all right, no harm done, Zoro waved his hand. But why would you lie about that? Nami remarked, tilting her head. I was afraid you might cause harm to her. She's sick enough as it is, and her damn caretaker has done nothing but suffocate her in that mansion of hers. Usopp gritted his teeth in frustration. She wants to get out of the house, but that caretaker of hers is always in the way. I'm not even sure if he actually has her best interests at heart anymore. And even though he's feeding her medicine, her health doesn't seem to get any better. If I had to guess, he might even be the one poisoning her. Luffy stiffened as he heard the last part. Usopp, do you care about her? The lady of the mansion. Luffy glanced at Usopp, who stared back at him, unsure of the question. Sure, she's a friend. Why? I have no proof right now, but she might be in danger. Luffy clenched his fist. Usopp and Nami gasped while Zoro lifted an eyebrow. How can you be sure, Captain? That caretaker looked like one of the pirates that was notorious around the time I joined the Marines. Luffy scratched his head. Give me a moment. Luffy pulled out his Den Mushi from his cloak and dialed the number for HQ. Captain Monkey D. Luffy reporting. Headquarters, give me whatever information you have on a certain Captain Curo. Understood. A moment. Captain, the ruffling of papers could be heard over the line. Captain Curo of the Black Cat Pirates, also known as Curo of 100 Plans. He was apprehended and executed 3 years ago with a bounty of 16 million berries. His crew still remains at large even after his execution. I want a description of how he looks like. His more notable features would be his round glasses and sleek black hair. He apparently has a habit of adjusting his glasses with the palm of his hand as well. Sounds like Cladorn to me. Luffy nodded, looking at the three of them behind him, who returned his gaze with shock. Headquarters, I'm reporting that Captain Curo is still alive and at large at Syrup Village. We know not of his plans at this time, but it is highly likely he is plotting something. Send a team over as soon as possible. Roger that, Captain. A team will be there tomorrow morning. Oh, Captain, I have a report from the team that went to retrieve Buggy. What is it? They, let him escape. Luffy gripped the tree beside him and tore out a chunk of it with his hands. The air cackled around him as his haki rolled out in waves. How? His voice was deceptively calm. They did not follow the instructions on the note. It seems they thought he was dead. With all those severed body parts. HQ still agreed on the half bounty though. It was obvious the Marine on the other end could already feel his fury. Captain Luffy, is this the same team that went after Alvida? Aye, sir. Tell them that they are to report back to Marineford to Vice Admiral Garp with details on their failure. Yes, sir. And help me relay a message to Vice Admiral Garp. Tell him I am sending him a couple of Marines that need some disciplining. Understood. Loud and clear, sir. Good. Is there anything else? Not at all, sir. Captain Luffy out. Luffy deposited the Den Mushi back within his cloak before facing the three wide-eyed people. What? Luffy asked, grinning, as though the anger he exuded before was merely a mirage. Were you always like this? Zoro asked, keeping his eyes fixed on him. Maybe. I don't know. Shishishishi. Luffy laughed. Well, putting that aside, we have another problem on our hands, Nami stated, crossing her arms. Aye, that damn Cladorn. So he's a pirate himself all the while and yet still insults my father. That hypocrite will get what's coming for him. I will take him on myself. Usopp clenched his fists. Usopp, wait, we can't act rashly now. We still don't know what he's planning. He's not called Curo of 100 Plans for nothing. If we act without knowing his goals, we might fall for his traps. Nami tried to calm him down. Indeed, we need to know what he's planning first. We should wait for backup to arrive too if we're planning on apprehending him, or else he might just use the mistress as a hostage. Zoro nodded. The problem remains in how do we expose his plans? Usopp scratched his head. How about we follow him? Luffy pointed at a departing Curo. He didn't seem to spot the four under the tree as he walked towards the shoreline opposite them. The four of them crept after Curo as he came to a beach that was identical to the northern one that the Straw Hats had landed their boat at. A weird man that wore heart-shaped sunglasses with a blue trench coat topped with a large blue hat appeared from behind some rocks, walking towards the caretaker. The four of them lay prone on the cliff overlooking the two on the beach. Is everything prepared, Django? Curo questioned the man, his demeanor entirely different from his time in the mansion. Of course, Captain Curo. Everything is in place and ready for your signal. The man have been waiting for you all this time. Django replied, smirking. Good, I don't want to waste any more time. This has to be done tomorrow. Of course. But who would have thought that Captain Curo would fake his own death and worm himself into a rich family's life all just to lay claim on their riches? Django chuckled. Enough of that, Django. I need you to know that there are a group of Marines in the town right now. I want the crew to attack the village to distract them while you and I head into the mansion and kill the girl. I will need you to hypnotize her to write a will that says she will give all of her fortunes to me. Understand? Oh yeah. You are such an evil man, Captain Curo. You've been with that girl for the past 3 years. Don't you have any feelings for the poor girl? Curo smirked as he adjusted his glasses with his palm. Not at all. The 3 years I spent with her were rather stifling, to be honest. That's why I poisoned her food to make sure she stays in bed as much as possible. That bastard. I knew it. Usopp was gritted his teeth. All right then, we'll attack from the northern shore tomorrow at dawn. Be ready, Django. With that, both men parted ways and Curo walked back to the mansion. The four of them remained unmoving as he moved past them. Only when he was out of sight did they let out the breath they were holding. I need to warn the villagers. I have to evacuate them out of here. I need to get Kaya out of the mansion too. Calm down, Usopp. We have this under control. Nami smacked him on the head. We know his plans now, so all we have to do is come up with our own plan to counter his. Geez, there's no need to overreact. All right, let's see what we know now. Zoro sat down on the ground. Curo's crew will be coming from the northern shore to attack the village in an attempt to distract us. While everyone is distracted in the attack, he and that weird Django guy will head to the mansion to get rid of the mistress. Am I right so far? Everyone nodded before Nami gasped suddenly. Our boat is there too. All the treasures are there. All the guys' sweat dropped. Even now all you care about is money. Zoro shook his head. Shut up. All of those are worth more than 10 million berries. I can't let those damn pirates have them. Without waiting for the others, she sprinted off back to the boat to hide her treasures. Nami, wait. We can and she's gone. Zoro deadpanned. No matter, let's form a plan first. Luffy sat down beside Zoro. Usopp, I need you to go and warn the villagers later and tell them to escape to the shore in the morning before dawn. Tell them to stay in their homes at night in case it rouses Curo's suspicion. I'll get the Marine back up to land at this side of the shore and move towards the village to defend it. I want you, Zoro and Nami, to be there to make sure all the villagers escape safely before the pirates reach there. No, I need to make sure Kaya is safe. Usopp immediately protested. Luffy nodded without complaining. All right, just Zoro and Nami then. Usopp will follow me to the mansion to stop the assassination. If possible, I want you to get Kaya and any other people out of the mansion as soon as we reach there. I will deal with Curo myself. Are we agreed on this? Both Usopp and Zoro nodded. I never thought that you would be much of a strategist, Zoro grinned. Well, we did have war simulations and Marine officer training. Luffy scratched his head in embarrassment. If there's no objections, both of you move out. I'll be staying here to guide the Marine reinforcements. Zoro, go get Nami and tell her the plan. Once you're all done, stay in the village and stay low. Don't tip Curo off that we know of his plans. Aye, Captain, let's go, Long Nose. Don't call me Long Nose. Both Zoro and Usopp ran towards the village. Luffy fished out his den mushi and placed it in front of him, awaiting the call of his reinforcements. After a few hours of waiting, the den mushi rang and Luffy moved to pick it up. This is Captain Hina reporting, responding to a call for reinforcements at Syrup Village. Luffy grinned as he heard the name. Hina, so you're coming, eh? Oh, is that Luffy? Hina should have known this was your number. Did you request for reinforcements? I have Pirate Captain Curo hiding in the village. I need men to ensure the safety of the villagers while I go beat him up. Hina understands. Reinforcements will arrive early tomorrow. Understood. I'll need your men in place before dawn. His crew will be attacking the village then. I need all of the villagers safely evacuated. They will be safe. Hina will make sure of that. And I need you to land your ship on the South Beach. That will be the evacuation point. Luffy could almost see Hina grinning wickedly. Hina sees you remembered your training with Vice Admiral Garp well. He will be proud. Shishishishi. This much is needed if I want to be an admiral. Understood. Hina will make sure it all goes smoothly. Hina out. Luffy disconnected the line. Now content that everything would work out smoothly, he extended his observation haki to encompass the island and listened to what was happening. Nami was busy stowing away their boat by a pile of rocks beside the beach in an attempt to hide her treasures. Zoro was trying his hardest to calm an angry mob of villagers that were chasing Usopp and calling him a liar while said person hid behind Zoro. Curo himself was inside the mansion, slipping into his role rather easily, doing his best to care for his mistress. Luffy grinned. When morning comes, Curo, I'll make sure no plan of yours can get you out of the pain I'm going to give you for the mess you made for this village. Luffy watched from the shoreline as boats were lowered from the anchored battleship across the water. He smiled as he saw Hina leading the first wave of Marines. Hina, long time no see. Luffy waved enthusiastically at the female Marine captain. She wore a purple suit over a white blouse which were complemented with a pair of dark purple gloves. The first 2 buttons of her blouse were left unbuttoned, just barely revealing the valley between her cleavage. A marine coat bearing the word justice in kanji draped loosely on her shoulders, and a pair of sunglasses rested idly on her head amongst her pinkish blonde hair. Luffy, she grinned, pulling him into a bear hug. It's been too long. Shishishi, indeed it has. How have you been? Luffy chuckled. She chuckled, finally letting go of Luffy. It's been fine, though the higher-ups have been a rather pain in my ass for quite some time. But enough of that. Hina's interested in your journey. How is your crew coming along? Oh, I'm fine. I managed to get a swordsman and a navigator so far, though the navigator hasn't confirmed her membership yet. She claims she still has unfinished business. Such a shame. Hina nodded sagely. It would be nice if Smoker was here too. I remember he didn't like you that much when you first joined up. She began to pop a cigarette into her mouth before noticing Luffy's stare. Ah, Hina, sorry. I forgot you never liked smoking. She put away her cigarette immediately, earning a grin from Luffy. Anyway, down to business. How soon can your men get ready? Luffy peeked at the Marines who were still organizing themselves on the beach. Hina turned and looked at them, gears grinding in her head. I would guess in 15 minutes or so. Luffy shook his head. Too slow. I need them in the village in defensive positions and another group to escort the villagers out. They need to be ready by 10. Hina grinned. 10 minutes it shall be then. She crossed her arms and turned to the Marines. Men, I want everyone to be ready in 10. Hop to it. Yes, Hina-sama. Every Marine immediately doubled their speed. Now, Luffy, what is with this Captain Curo you mentioned? Wasn't he executed 3 years ago? Hina raised an eyebrow. Luffy shook his head. Apparently not. I don't know how he did it, but he's here right now with his old crew. He plans to assassinate the mansion's mistress to claim her fortune while his crew attacks the village. Hina nodded. I'll have a team set up a defensive perimeter around the town while another will act as escort. Another smaller team will head to the mansion. Is that agreeable? I'll be heading to the mansion myself. Luffy nodded. I'll be taking down Curo if you don't mind. By all means, he's yours, Hina chuckled. I'll take care of the pirates attacking the village. We'll rendezvous at the village center once you're done with him. All right, let's move out then, Luffy grinned. Zoro watched Usopp and Nami directing all the villagers to the center of the village. He sighed as he remembered the events of last night. When Usopp tried to convince them that pirates were attacking the village, all of them had called him a liar and chased him around the village with weapons in hand. Zoro had to step in as a Marine and affirm the villagers that what Usopp had said was true before they believed them. The dark sky began to brighten as the villagers gathered awaiting their Marine escort. Nami rejoined Zoro leaning against one of the village huts. We got everyone ready to go, Nami sighed. Ha, so you can care about things other than money, Zoro smirked. Nami shrugged. I'm unofficially a Marine now, so I guess I'll just follow the captain's orders as long as I'm here. But make no mistake, the treasures are still mine. Nami grinned, wagging a finger at him. Zoro just huffed but said nothing. They didn't have to wait long before a company of Marines showed up and proceeded to escort the villages to the southern beach. Another company led by Hina and Luffy entered the village as soon as the villagers moved out. I want everyone in their positions. Encircle the village and prepare to ambush the pirates when they enter the village. Squad leaders take over your squads, Hina commanded. Yes, Hina-sama. The Marines scurried to obey. Once the scouts report the pirates landing, I'll head straight to the mansion, Luffy commented. Understood. Don't worry about this end of things, Luffy. Just go kick that guy's ass. Hina clutched his shoulder reassuringly. Luffy approached Zoro and Nami with a grin plastered on his face. Zoro, Nami, stay here and make sure things go smoothly. Captain Hina over there will be in charge of things here. Usopp, you'll follow me to the mansion as soon as the pirates are spotted on the beach. All right. Aye, Captain. Of course. All three answered confidently. By the time the scouts returned to report on pirates landing on the beach, everything was prepared to receive them. Luffy, go. Hina will handle things here. Understood. Thanks again, Hina. Luffy grabbed Usopp and ran towards the mansion. Hina approached Zoro and Nami. You're Luffy's crew, right? How well can you handle yourselves? Well enough, Zoro grinned, clutching his swords. Hina grunted without comment. I need the two of you to be in the shadows. Don't come out unless things don't go according to plan. You two will be our fail-safe. Leave it to us. Nami pounded her chest confidently. Zoro and Nami hid behind one of the village buildings. Zoro had his hand gripping firmly on his sheathed swords and Nami held onto her staff confidently. Every Marine had their weapons ready as they awaited their orders. Only Hina remained in the center of the village alone. The Black Cat pirates charged into the village not suspecting a thing, only to be greeted by a lone Marine captain standing with her arms crossed, casually puffing on a cigarette that she could not in Luffy's presence. I am Captain Hina of the Marines. Members of the Black Cat pirates, lay down your weapons quietly or face the consequences. The pirates began to whisper amongst themselves. This must be the Marine the captain was talking about. She's only one person. Against us she doesn't stand a chance. She looks pretty though. Why is the village so empty? Last warning, pirates, Hina shouted, tapping her foot impatiently. We need to carry out Captain Curo's plans, or we'll be slaughtered. A pirate yelled, spurning all the pirates to face the Marine captain, weapons flashing wickedly. Hina disappointed. Hina sighed, raising her hand as the signal. Marines burst forth from the shadows of the village, instantly surrounding the confused pirates. Nami and Zoro stood nearby, close enough to join the fight if it happens, but still out of sight. The pirates panicked seeing the number of Marines outnumbering them and their rifles pointed directly at them. Lay down your weapons, pirates, Hina yelled again. The panicking pirates began to comply, but one of them took out a small silver whistle from his pocket. The captain told us to use this in case something like this happened. He grinned wickedly at the Marines before blowing into it. A piercing screech echoed through the village and everyone had to cover their eyes to protect their eardrums. Enough. Capture these pirates, Hina commanded. Sudden screams penetrated the air as the squad of Marines closest to the entrance of the village began to fall. In the middle of the prone Marines stood two men dressed like cats. One of them had a really huge belly that his pants barely held thanks to the sash tied to his waist. A blanket-looking cape draped over his shoulders, and in his hands were two identical gloves that ended in wicked cat-like claws. The other man was the exact opposite, being incredibly skinny and wore a navy blue shirt with a bow tie. In his hands were also gloves with cat claws. Both of their gloves were soaked in blood. Hina furrowed her brows at this, sensing the new threat. It's the Nyaban brothers. One of the pirates cheered. Go get them, Sham, Butchai. Stupid Marines. It's not good to go against Captain Curo's plans. The skinny Sham snickered. Don't move, Marines, or we'll kill these guys. The blubbery Butchai held onto one of the unconscious Marines. Hina cursed under her breath, calling all the Marines to drop their rifles and back away. A shadow dashed towards Butchai from behind, slashing towards Butchai. He immediately dropped the Marine and leapt back from the slash, spotting his new enemy. Roronoa Zoro, Sham exclaimed. Why are you here? I'm a Marine now, and I would prefer if you don't go against my captain's plans. He grinned, swinging his sword in an arc lazily. Oh no, we definitely don't stand a chance against someone like him. We're so screwed. Sham began waving his arms around in a panic. Zoro raised an eyebrow at his outburst, but held onto his sword firmly. Sham, we need to follow the captain's plans, or else he'll slaughter us. One of the pirates shouted helpfully. TRR, I guess I have no choice. Here I come. Sham rushed at Zoro while swinging his arms wildly with his eyes closed. Is this guy for real? Zoro stared at the charging Sham in disbelief. He prepared to receive the charge when Sham suddenly sidestepped to his right and lashed out towards him, Zoro barely deflecting the blow in time. Before he could recover, Sham had slashed his other hand from his left and Zoro was forced to be on the defensive, catching Sham's claws with his blade. Lowering your guard could be fatal, Roronoa Zoro, Sham smirked, leaping back from him. Zoro, your swords, Nami gasped. Zoro glared hard at Sham, who had taken both his swords and held it loosely with his left hand. Give me back my swords, Zoro demanded, his eyes ice cold. Sure, Sham smirked, tossing the swords in the other direction of Zoro. Zoro furrowed his brows. You'll pay for that. Make me. Sham charged at Zoro again, slashing at him with his claws. With only a single sword, Zoro fended off a fury of strikes by Sham, constantly being pushed back. Sham struck out with his right hand, aiming for Zoro's face, only to be deflected by his blade. His left hand immediately swiped as well, but Zoro managed to step back from it. When Zoro tried to lunge towards Sham, he would leap backwards from the lunge and move in to swipe at him again. Damn it, this is going nowhere. I need my other swords. Zoro frowned. He couldn't go on the offensive with only one sword against Sham's claws. Nami rushed towards the two swords on the ground, aiming to return them back to Zoro. Butchai appeared behind her, claws outstretched menacingly. It wouldn't do if you forgot there's two of us, girlie. Butchai brought his hand down, slashing in an arc. Nami managed to roll away in time and made a grab for Zoro's swords. Zoro, catch, Nami yelled, tossing the swords at him. Zoro grinned, catching his swords in midair and unsheathing them with grace. Thanks, Nami. He popped his last sword into his mouth, facing Sham again. TCH, I'll still finish you off, you damn girl. Butchai slashed at Nami in an X shape. Don't forget about Hina, you lousy pirate. Hina stepped in front of Nami, kicking at his wrist. Butchai's hands passed through her legs only to find themselves bound together with an iron manacle. What did you do? Butchai demanded, struggling against the manacles to no avail. I ate the ori fruit. Anything that passes through my body will be locked up. She grinned. It's perfect for capturing criminals like you. Damn you. Butchai jumped into the air with his leg poised to strike her. Cat stomp. Hina leaped back to avoid the drop that cracked the ground. She dashed forward towards Butchai, who held his bound hands in front of him, claws outstretched to impale her. She slid on the ground as she neared him and slid in between his legs, ending up behind him. Pushing herself up with her hands, she kicked towards Butchai's legs, passing through them and trapping his legs in iron manacles. As Butchai fell backwards from the kick, Hina rolled backwards and kicked her leg upwards, passing her leg through his body and arms before he finally landed on the ground, unable to move from his bindings. Hina stepped on him as she puffed her cigarette. Hina, victory. You're just small-time pirates compared to the ones I usually have to deal with. Don't get so full of yourselves. Butchai, damn you Marines, Sham cried out, watching Butchai struggle in vain against his bindings. You shouldn't turn your back to an opponent, you damn pirate, Zoro grinned, raising his 2 swords in his hands to cross with the one in his mouth. Onigiri. Zoro slashed his 3 swords simultaneously. Blood spurted from the cut wounds on Sham as he collapsed, bleeding. Arg, damn you Marines, Sham cried, clutching at his arm where a cut had landed. No way, the Nyamba brothers are defeated. The pirates gasped. I'm not saying it again, you filthy pirates. Lay down your weapons, Hina yelled. The group of Black Cat pirates glanced at one another before dropping their weapons, surrendering to the Marines. The Marines immediately moved in to capture them, tying them up with the ropes they prepared. Not bad, so both of you are Marines now? Hina asked, crossing her arms in front of Zoro and Nami. Or at least, I am. Headquarters hasn't issued my rank yet. Zoro grinned, then jerked his thumb at Nami. She's only here for the ride. Nami stuck her tongue out at him, but said nothing. So I heard, Hina nodded. Luffy has a good eye. You'd do well to stay by him. He can be a handful at times, but that's part of the fun. What's your relationship with him? Nami raised an eyebrow. We're just friends. He was put under my care for some time during his training. Hina puffed on her cigarette, still stepping on Butchai. I see. But the two of you seemed like you knew each other for quite some time. Nami asked, tilting her head. He has that way with people, Hina grinned. Trust me, you should have seen the things he did back then. You just can't help but like that boy. Nami and Zoro nodded, understanding. Well, that's dealt with. I wonder how's Luffy doing on his end, Nami remarked, brushing the dirt out of her skirt. That's her room. Usopp pointed to the half-open window. Luffy nodded in understanding. Go in there and get her out. I'll distract them at the front door. Usopp nodded and crept stealthily to the window, climbing in without making a sound. You guys, spread out around the mansion. Shout if you see anything, Luffy ordered the group of Marines that accompanied them. Luffy strolled up to the door and knocked loudly, waiting for Curo to respond to it. The door opened, but instead of Curo, another butler with curly white hair and small lamb horns on his head answered the door. May I help you? He asked, eyeing Luffy suspiciously. Who are you? Where is Cladorn? Luffy demanded, worried that he might be another one of Curo's crew. Cladorn had gone to the next village yesterday. He hasn't come back yet. Do you want me to take a message? The butler raised an eyebrow. No need. Is Miss Kaya in? The butler squinted his eyes at the Marine. She is. But she's still resting. It's barely dawn after all. What do you need? I need to see her. Please let me in. Luffy glanced around, worried Curo might be hiding around the house. Certainly not, even if you're a Marine. This is still private property. I can't just let you come in just because. Kyaya. A sudden scream echoed through the house. What's going on? The butler burst into the room right behind Luffy. Mary, it's nothing. Usopp just surprised me, that's all. Mary smiled reassuringly at the butler. Usopp, what are you doing in my lady's room? You better not have done anything to her, Mary yelled, shaking his fist angrily at him. Of course not. Anyway, Kaya, you need to trust me. We need to get you out of here right now. Usopp pleaded. What are you talking about? Mary questioned, taking a step towards Usopp. He said that Cladorn is actually a pirate captain all this while and is currently plotting to take my life in order to seize my fortune. Kaya answered for Usopp. Impossible. Cladorn has been a trusted caretaker of this family for the past 3 years. You think we'll believe such lies from the village liar? Mary began advancing on Usopp, clearly intent on throwing him out. Luffy held a hand on his shoulder, pulling Mary back. Miss Kaya, it's all true. What? Kaya looked at the Marine, shocked. We overheard this Cladorn talking with one of his crew members yesterday night. He plans to get you to turn over your fortune to him before killing you. His crew is currently attacking the town as we speak. Luffy looked at her with cold eyes. No, that's not possible. Not after all that he's done. Kaya covered her mouth as tears threatened to spill out. Please believe me, Kaya. He's also the reason why you started falling sick. He has been poisoning you all this while. Usopp clenched his fists, barely containing back his anger. No, this can't be possible. Both of you must be lying. Mary shouted at them. He's been with us for so long. He was always nice to everyone. That definitely can't be true. Mary, Kaya began. What's going on here? A figure wearing round-framed glasses strolled into the room, adjusting it with the palm of his hand. Cladorn, Mary exclaimed, smiling. Tell us that's not true. You're not a pirate, aren't you? Oh, so the Marine captain and the village's biggest liar is here too. No wonder there were so many Marines outside. No matter, I'll just have to kill you two as well. Curo smirked. That was when they realized the claws Curo now wears on his hands were coated with fresh blood. You, what did you do to them? Luffy furrowed his brows, a shadow covering his eyes. Nothing much, Curo smirked. Just let them take a long nap in the dirt, of course. Before anyone could react, Luffy was in front of Curo, sending his fist into his gut, sending him flying out of the room and crashing into the wall across the corridor. Usopp, grab them and get out of here. I'll handle him, Luffy yelled, not taking his eyes off where Curo had crashed through. Kaya, come on. We need to go. Usopp grabbed Kaya's hands, pulling her towards the open window. She followed him without hesitation now. No, Cladorn, why would you lie to us? Mary had tears in his eyes. Mary, it doesn't matter now, we have to go, Kaya shouted, bringing Mary out of his stupor. He ran towards the two and helped Usopp carry Kaya out through the window. My, this definitely wasn't calculated in my plans. Django, make sure you get rid of them. Curo nodded towards a figure at the main entrance. Of course, Captain Curo. He turned and left towards the direction of Usopp's group. You're not going anywhere. Luffy began to run towards the door when Curo appeared in front of him, barring his way. He knows Zoro. Luffy hesitated before diving to his left to dodge the swipe of Kuro's cat claws. Curo reappeared in front of him again and slashed, only to hit air as Luffy retreated further back into the mansion. No, he's using pure leg strength to move fast. There's no technique in his movements. Luffy grinned. You're fast for a Marine. Curo adjusted his spectacles, a frown plastered on his face. And you're fast for a pirate. I'm still faster though. Chishishishi, Luffy laughed. TCH, I'll show you fast. Curo clucked his tongue at him. Stealth foot. Curo disappeared. Luffy could still see him though, watching him moving around the room and slashing at everything around him. He seemed to move irregularly, as though he didn't care what he slashed at. I see. He trained his legs to be fast, but he himself can't see what he's attacking. Zoro. Luffy jumped up straight into Curo, grabbing him by his collar and throwing him to the ground. Curo sat up, coughing. Impossible. How did you match my speed? I told you, Curo, I'm faster than you. Luffy smirked. Curo furrowed his brows as he used his speed to get behind Luffy. I would like to stay and play with you, but I need to check up on my friends, so sorry. Curo slashed his claws at the back of the Marine captain. Tekai. The claws on his left hand shattered into pieces as soon as they struck the Marine. Curo could only look at his shattered claws incredulously as the pieces hit the floor. Luffy turned to grin at him. Curo's blood boiled with rage as he stabbed his right hand forward at the Marine, only for those claws to shatter as well. Without hesitating, he spun around, delivered a kick to Luffy's head, who received it without flinching. Arms crossed. Captain Curo. Under the name Captain Monkey D. Luffy, I hereby place you under arrest in the name of justice. Luffy grinned at him. No, my plan cannot fail. Not after all these years. Curo growled at Luffy, spinning to kick at him again. Luffy leaned back to avoid the kick before stepping forward and deliver a crushing blow to Curo's head, smashing him into the ground of the mansion, unconscious. Apparently it did. Captain Curo, Luffy grinned, before sprinting out of the mansion to find Usopp. When I say 1, 2, Django, you will fall asleep. 1, 2, Django. Kaya gazed in horror as both Usopp and Mary collapsed onto the floor, already fast asleep. They managed to run out of the mansion and head into the forest nearby before Django caught up with them. Django laughed wickedly as he advanced upon the helpless girl. Oh yeah. So much for your fearless bodyguards, lady. Now all I need you to do is to right the wolf for my captain while he kills that Marine. Let's not make this any harder than it has to be, all right. Kaya was on the ground, backing away slowly at each step Django took towards her. Now, when I say 1, 2, Django, you will right the will. 1, 2, JRRGH. Django screamed in pain as something hit him in the back of his head. He turned to look at Usopp holding onto his slingshot, loading in another piece of stone and firing at Django, hitting him squarely between the eyes. ARGH. Damn you, you long-nosed freak. Django toppled onto the floor on his hunches, grabbing his nose in pain where the stone had struck him. Kaya, run. I'll deal with this guy, Usopp shouted, readying another stone to shoot. But, Usopp, I can't just leave by myself, Kaya protested. Go, before he. Enough. No one's going anywhere, Django yelled, brandishing his chakrams. Usopp shoots another stone at him, but Django was ready this time, cutting the stone projectile nimbly with a chakram. You should be asleep, Django commented. As if I'll look if you tell me to look at this ring. Usopp smirked, loading in another stone into his slingshot. Django frowned as he swung his chakram to block another of Usopp's shots. Enough, I'll kill you first. Django charged towards Usopp, spinning his chakrams in his hands. Run, Kaya. Usopp stood to face the charging Django. If I run, he might go after Kaya instead. And I can't leave Mary in that state either. What to do, Usopp? What? Usopp dived to his right as Django sliced his chakram at him, easily cutting through the tree behind him. TCH, stay still, you little brat. Django turned to face Usopp again. No, you stay right where you are, Usopp shouted, shooting another rock at him. Stop wasting my time. You know you can't hit me anymore. Django knocked away the stone only to find another stone directly behind it, smashing through his sunglasses and hitting him straight in the eye. AARRGGHH. I swear I quote I'll kill you. Django screamed, clutching his eye. Usopp tackled him onto the ground, pinning him down. He turned to realize Kaya still sat at the same spot as before. Kaya. I can't, Usopp. I can't feel my legs. Kaya gasped. No, Curo must have poisoned her more than usual last night to prevent her from running. Usopp cursed under his breath. Get off me, you bastard. Django sliced his chakram at him, cutting Usopp in his shoulder. Usopp screamed as he clutched his shoulder, feeling blood pouring freely down his arm, sprawling onto the floor. Django kicked him in the gut repeatedly to shut him up as Usopp gasped for breath. Satisfied after a few dozen kicks, Django wiped his sweat off his brow. Stay right there, you bastard. I'll deal with you once I'm done with the girl. He advanced on the girl again. Now come on, look at this ring. When I say, hey, don't close your eyes, Django yelled at Kaya, who had already snapped her eyes shut. Damn it, I can't hypnotize you when you close your eyes. Django cursed. He looked at the still gasping Usopp and dragged him to Kaya, placing his chakram to his neck. Listen, lady, if you don't right the will now, I will kill this damn brat in front of you. Django muttered in front of Kaya. Kaya opened her eyes to see an out-of-breath and bleeding Usopp in front of her and gasped. Django took out a piece of paper and pen from his pocket and tossed it to her. Write it now or I slice open his neck. No, Kaya cough. Don't do it. Usopp breathed. Django struck him across the head. Shut up. Do it, you stupid girl. Stop. Please. I'll write it. Just let him go. Kaya reached out to Usopp, but he was just out of her reach. Write the damn will, you infernal brat. Django shouted at her impatiently. A trickle of blood slid down from Usopp's neck. Usopp furrowed his brows and bit down hard on the hand that was holding him, shocking Django into letting go of his chakram. You damn long nose. Why the hell are you trying to so hard to protect her? Django screamed, clutching his hand. Usopp collapsed on the floor. Shut up. I'll protect what I want to protect. I let my mother die on me once. I won't let that happen to Kaya either. I will protect what I treasure. Usopp stood on shaky legs in front of Kaya, protecting her from Django. You bastard, if I don't finish this up soon, my captain's going to kill me. Django brought out 2 more chakrams from underneath his cloak. I will only warn you once. Step aside, boy, or I will kill you. Never. Usopp stood defiantly. Despite his bravado, his legs were clearly shaking uncontrollably. Then die along with her. Django sliced his chakram at Usopp. Usopp could see the chakram flying towards him. He thought about what would happen if he were to fall to this pirate. Kaya would have to write the will to sign over her fortunes to Curo and die by his hands. Her dream of becoming a doctor would also never be realized. Aha, to be honest, my dream is really to become a great warrior of the sea. That's so cool. It was the first time someone didn't actually laugh at his dream. Usopp reached out and grabbed the chakram with his left hand, wincing in pain as the chakram cut his hand. Django tried to pry his chakram out from his hand but realized it wouldn't budge. You, who are you? Django gasped, slack-jawed at Usopp. I am Usopp, the greatest warrior of the sea. Usopp punched as hard as he could at Django with his right fist, sending him sprawling onto the floor, unmoving. Wow, that was a nice punch. Both Usopp and Kaya turned to look at Luffy standing by a tree grinning at the two of them. How long were you there? Usopp gasped. When you said you would protect what you want to protect. Luffy smiled. Why didn't you help me then? Usopp shouted at him with shark-like teeth. Shishishi, you didn't have the look of a guy who was about to give up, Luffy chuckled. Besides, you're a great warrior of the sea, right? You should be able to protect what you treasure the most. Usopp snorted, but smiled at his comment. It's over, huh? Yep. Hey, Usopp, you want to join my crew as a Marine? Luffy grinned. As a Marine. Usopp glanced at Luffy. Yeah, you're hardly a great warrior of the sea if you're not actually at sea, are you? Shishishi, Luffy laughed. Ha ha ha, I guess not. Usopp collapsed beside Kaya, who was staring at the two incredulously. Usopp took one long look at Kaya, who looked back at him reassuringly. A Marine, huh? I guess I don't mind. Usopp grinned. Yeah. Luffy punched his hands in the air victoriously. This is Captain Heener reporting. Headquarters, come in. Headquarters receiving loud and clear. Go ahead, Captain Hina. Hina victorious. We have successfully rounded up the Black Cat pirates and Captain Curo, although the Stand and Captain Django managed to escape. Understood, Captain Hina. The bounty for them will be sent to you once you turn them in at the nearest base. Negative HQ. Send the bounty to Captain Monkey D. Luffy. He was the one who caught Captain Curo himself. Will do. Good job, Captains. Headquarters out. Hina stowed her den mushy away, watching as the bound pirates are loaded up into the Marine battleship. Captain Curo himself was still unconscious and had to be carried while bound with Hina's manacles. Django had managed to escape while Luffy was carrying an unconscious Mary, a sick Kaya, and an injured Usopp back to the village. You sure you don't want to split the bounty, Hina? Luffy asked, tilting his head. Hina shook her head, grinning. Hina satisfied with just seeing you again. I'll have to head back to the Grand Line soon, so this should be the last time I'm seeing you on this part of the sea. Shishishi, if you insist then, I'll take it. Luffy chuckled. When you stop by Logtown, say hi to Smoker for me. Hina smiled. All right, if you see Gramps, say hi to him for me too. Hina gave Luffy one last bear hug before turning and waving goodbye. Luffy turned to see his 3 crew members grinning at him, ready to set sail again. You bet we are, Captain. Zoro grinned. Captain Luffy. A voice yelled out. All of them turned to see Mary running towards them, waving his hands frantically. Hey, it's the sheep guy, Luffy smiled. Captain Luffy, my mistress wants to see you. Mary gasped, finally reaching them. Oh, what for? Luffy quirked an eyebrow. She said she has something to give you. You should go find her at the jetty behind the mansion. Mary beckoned them to follow him. Kaya was waiting for them when they finally reached the mansion's jetty. Luffy, you mentioned about needing a ship before, right? Yes. Luffy nodded dumbly. Kaya gestured to the ship behind her. It's nothing much, but please accept it as my thanks to you. It's a caravel. Nami exclaimed. It's so cool. Luffy's eyes sparkled. Way better than what we have now, Zoro grinned. Are you sure, Kaya? This is too much for us. Usopp hesitated. Oh, don't be such a wet blanket, Usopp. She's willing to give it to us. Nami smacked Usopp on the head. Kaya giggled at their antics. It's fine, Usopp. I know it would do well in your crew's hands. What's the ship called? Luffy asked, already jumping around the ship in joy. The Going Merry, Mary answered helpfully. Yeah, this is going to be so awesome. We're going out to the sea on Merry, guys. Luffy cheered. The others couldn't help but smile at him. Kaya, I promise I'll come back one day with much more tales than before. Usopp grinned. I look forward to it, Usopp. Kaya giggled. Let's head out to see Marines. Luffy yelled, punching the air in victory. A few hours after setting sail. So we need to have our own symbol as a Marine ship. Luffy wagged his finger. Leave the drawing to me. I had tons of practice when I used to draw on the walls of people's homes in the past. Usopp grinned proudly. That not really something to be proud about. Nami's sweat dropped. Usopp drew the symbol of Marines on top of the flag and then a straw hat right below it. What do you think? Usopp looked at his handiwork proudly. It's perfect. Nami exclaimed. That's definitely us. Zoro nodded. Then let's go with it. Luffy held onto the flag proudly. We need to paint it on the sails too. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. The 4 finally collapsed on the ground after finishing their painting. All of them glanced at the Marine insignia with the straw hat underneath it. As of today, the Straw Hat Marines is officially formed. Luffy punched into the air. The other 3 grinned at him, punching in the air similarly. Yeah. Hey Usopp, you're pretty good with your slingshot, right? Luffy asked, spinning his straw hat on his finger. The 4 of them were seated in the ship's kitchen, eating a rather plain breakfast at the table. Yeah, anything I can see, I can hit. Usopp beamed proudly, thumping his chest. You can be our marksman then, just like your dad was on Shanks' crew. Luffy grinned. Usopp's jaw hit the table. Just like my dad. A marksman of the crew. Yeah, of course. I'll take it. Usopp punched his hands in the air, chuckling to himself. Besides that, I think we need another crew member, Luffy pointed out, putting his hat back on his head. Indeed, we have such a nice kitchen too. Nami nodded, smiling. It would be a waste if it's not used properly. Zoro grinned. Shishishi. Yep, we need a musician. Luffy chuckled. No we don't. All 3 of them yelled at their captain with shark teeth. Why would we even need a musician in the first place? A tick appeared on Nami's head. Because sailors love to sing. Luffy replied as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. Whenever I followed my my trainer on his ship, his crew would always be singing. It was so fun. Nami sighed at his simple-minded mentality. Zoro grinned and shook his head. Usopp nodded to himself as if Luffy had just shared a great piece of wisdom with him. The fact remains that this kitchen is wasted on the 4 of us, Nami sighed, glancing at the simple toast and eggs breakfast they made for themselves. It would be nice if we could find a cook. He would know to get the best booze. Zoro grinned, drinking even in the morning. Oh, then I can have meat every day. Luffy grinned. I guess we can find one on our next stop, assuming there is one. Usopp nodded. Luffy and Usopp were on the deck, Luffy watching Usopp tinkering with one of the cannons. All right, I'm done with this one, Usopp exclaimed, wiping the sweat off his brow. Hey, so you're good with these things too? Luffy's eyes sparkled. Of course, back in my village, I had to learn to take apart and put together many of my neighbors' things as pranks. Usopp thumped his chest proudly. So cool, Luffy exclaimed, punching his hands in the air. Alright, now to test this out. Usopp swiveled the cannon to point at an outcrop of rocks nearby. Loading a cannonball inside, he squinted his eyes as he adjusted its elevation before firing the cannon and hitting the rock with a satisfying boom. Wow, you hit it on your first try, Luffy exclaimed. Of course, I'm the marksman after all. Usopp grinned proudly. Luffy stiffened as he heard a scream. Usopp was oblivious to it, but Luffy heard it clearly with his haki. Guys, turn this ship around. There's someone on that rock, Luffy shouted, going into captain mode. Hey, the rock we just shot at. Usopp paled. Yes, Nami, turn it around, Luffy shouted, pulling his marine coat he had left hanging on the railing over his shoulders. Aye, Captain. She turned to wheel, swiveling the ship to pass beside the rock. As the ship passed by, they spotted a small boat that was tied to the rock and an angry swordsman shaking his fist at them. He wore a blue jacket over his t-shirt and a pair of sunglasses donned on his face. His sword hung prominently on his right hip. You damn Marines. What the hell was that for? He yelled. Sorry, that was our marksman testing out our cannons. You're still okay, right? Luffy scratched his head in embarrassment. Like hell I'm okay when you shot a cannon at me. My friend is dying here. The swordsman gestured to the prone figure beside him, clearly not in good shape. Hey, aren't you Johnny? What the hell happened to Yosaku? Zoro lifted an eyebrow. Is that brother Zoro? Johnny's eyes popped out. Stop shouting at us, Nami shouted back. It was a while later when Johnny managed to get his partner Yosaku onto Mary, with Zoro asking what happened to them. He's sick, brother Zoro, Johnny cried. Sick? All four Marines tilted their heads at him. Yeah, he was just fine a couple of days ago, but he suddenly turned pale and he kept passing out on me. Then his teeth started falling out and even his old wounds reopened. I don't know if he's able to make it anymore. Johnny was bawling at the gasping figure of Yosaku on the deck. I was letting him rest on the rock there, but suddenly you guys fired at us. Both Usopp and Luffy gaped at him, bowing their heads in shame. We're so sorry. It's all right. What's done is done. Johnny sniffled. If this is the way he's meant to die, then so be it. Luffy and Usopp had tears streaming down their faces now. We were such great partners, taking down pirates one after the other. Is this how it will all end? Wow, you guys are really idiots, Nami said calmly, unfazed by his crying. Nami, how can you be so calm? He's dying, Usopp shouted at her. Shut up. If you have time to cry, go to the kitchen and squeeze some lime juice for him to drink. Nami smacked Usopp on the head. Why? Lime juice. But why? Usopp rubbed his head. Just do it. Nami smacked him again, causing Usopp to break off running into the kitchen. Your friend's suffering from scurvy. When was the last time you guys actually ate any fruits or vegetables? Nami scoffed at Johnny. A few weeks ago, I guess. Johnny scratched his head at the sudden question. Then you guys are idiots. Nami smacked Johnny's head as well. If you don't eat well, of course you'll fall sick. Usopp returned and began pouring the cup of lime juice down Yosaku's throat with Luffy helping to open his mouth. The scene looked as though they were putting him through water torture. If we're not too late, your friend should recover in a few days, Nami sighed. Really sis, Yosaku's going to be okay. Johnny tried to grab Nami's shoulders only for her to push him away. Please don't call me sis. And how can you guys not know this? This is the most basic knowledge a sailor should know. Nami smacked Johnny again. That's right. I remember they taught us that in the Marines too. Luffy looked up at them, still holding Yosaku's mouth open while Usopp continued to dump lime juice down his throat. Are you guys trying to drown him? Nami yelled incredulously. Yosaku opened his eyes suddenly, flinging both Usopp and Luffy off as he jumped up on his feet. I am revived. Yosaku punched his hands in the air in victory. My partner's all fine now. Johnny joined Yosaku in their victory dance. Like hell you can recover that quickly. Nami yelled at the two of them. Sorry. The two swordsmen settled down. My name is Johnny, I'm a bounty hunter. Johnny grinned. And I am Yosaku, likewise a bounty hunter. Brother Zoro used to bounty hunt with us in the past. He scratched his head in embarrassment. I really owe my life to you guys. If you hadn't come along, I would have died by now. Speaking of which, I never thought that Brother Zoro the pirate hunter, the one who always hated following orders, would become a Marine. Johnny remarked. Indeed, a very remarkable turn of events. Yosaku nodded, before suddenly spurting out blood and collapsing. Just shut up and rest already, you moron, Zoro shouted at him. With Yosaku tucked away in the men's quarters, the crew gathered on deck again. If we want to survive out at sea, we're going to have to get ourselves a proper cook, Nami remarked. The question now is, where can we find one? Zoro grinned. I can help with that, brother Zoro. Johnny raised his hand like a schoolboy answering a question. There's a famous restaurant of the seas a few days' sail away from here. You're sure to find a good cook there. Whether you can convince a cook to join you, though, that's another question. All right, let's set a course to the restaurant. Luffy grinned. The ship sailed steadily towards their destination for the next 2 days, with Yosaku recovering well enough to join the crew on the deck. On the third day, the floating restaurant finally came into view. The restaurant itself was a ship designed to look like a fish. The front of the ship had a fish head and the tail doubled as the ship's rudder. The body of the fish was replaced by a 3-story building with the words Restaurant Baratie proudly on display at the entrance. It's a fish. That's so cool. Luffy's eyes sparkled. Hurry guys, I can smell meat from here. As they neared the restaurant, a marine ship heading in the same direction pulled up next to them. A man wearing a white pinstripe suit appeared on the deck, spotting the straw hats. What kind of marine unit is that? I've never seen that one before. The man stepped closer to the railings, scrutinizing the crew on the ship with disdain. Hey, who's your captain? Which unit do you belong to? I've never seen you guys before. The man spat arrogantly. Luffy stepped up to the prow of his ship, returning the man's gaze without flinching. Who the heck are you? The man noticed the marine cloak that Luffy wore and frowned. I am Marine Lieutenant Fullbody, also known as Iron Fist Fullbody. Now who the heck are you? Luffy clucked his tongue at the name, not recognizing it. He crossed his arms at the lieutenant. I am Marine Captain Monkey D. Luffy. My unit, Straw Hat Marines, was only officially formed 2 days ago under the direct command of Vice Admiral Garp. What business do you have with us? Fullbody stiffened at once and saluted immediately. My apologies, sir. I didn't have prior knowledge of your group's existence. Please forgive my rudeness. That was a quick change in tone, Nami noted. Leave it to our captain to put show-offs in their place. Zoro grinned. What is your business here, Lieutenant Fullbody? Luffy asked. Well, I'm currently off duty right now, and I have a date planned at that restaurant, sir. Fullbody stuttered, unsure of how the captain will react. Oh, what a coincidence. Luffy grinned. We're heading there too. I'll see you guys inside then. Luffy waved him away. Of course, sir. Fullbody kept his salute up until Luffy turned away from him, visibly letting out the breath he had been holding. As both ships docked on the restaurant, Luffy gathered his crew around. All right, you guys go get yourselves something to eat first. I'll talk to the owner and see if has any cooks willing to join us. Everyone stared at Luffy in disbelief. You would actually do something else when there's food right there. Usopp gasped. What? Once we get our own food, I can eat however I want. Luffy grinned. Everyone sighed as they prepared to disembark. As Luffy was preparing to leave, a voice called out from behind him, Luffy, Captain, may I have a word? Luffy turned to see Nami hanging around the now empty deck. Sure, what do you need, Nami? Nami hesitated, unwilling to meet Luffy's eyes. You'll be stopping at my village soon, right? Yep, why? Luffy raised any eyebrow. I may have some appointments I need to keep back there. Nami looked at Luffy hesitatingly. Oh, really? How soon? Within this week. Luffy scratched his chin, thinking. I understand. I'll make sure we'll spend at maximum 3 days here. We'll get you back on time, don't worry about it. Thanks, Luffy. Nami massaged her arm in embarrassment. The Straw Hat Marines found themselves a table beside the Marine lieutenant they met earlier, and began ordering food for themselves while Luffy went off to find the owner. Luffy found a chef and asked to be lead to the owner. The chef saw the Marine insignia that Luffy wore and complied immediately. Owner Zeph, there's a Marine looking for you. The chef ratted on the door that led to his room. Send him in. A voice came from the other side. Luffy entered the room to find a blonde-haired old man sitting by his desk in a chef uniform. He sported an impressive mustache that was accompanied by a beard. On his head rested a chef's hat that almost reached all the way to the ceiling of the room, as though to make a point that the person wearing it was a chef. The most noticeable feature was that his right leg ended in a stump just below the knee and a wooden peg leg was attached to it. Hey, are you the owner? Luffy waved. Zeph stood up to meet Luffy. I'm Zeph. What do you want, Marine? I'm Captain Monkey D. Luffy and I'm looking for a cook to join my crew. Luffy grinned. You're looking for a cook to join your crew? Zeph repeated. Yeah, I don't suppose you have someone that might want to join my crew. Luffy continued to smile at him. TCH, you're strange for a Marine. The owner grinned. Usually when a Marine asks to see me is to demand for me to waive their expenses as a fee for their protection or some sort. We see cooks need no protection from Marines. Oh, so you guys can fight too? Even better. Luffy laughed. You're an interesting one, boy. Zeph smiled. So you need a cook on your crew, eh? Especially one that knows how to fight. You bet. He needs to be able to cook and kick ass. Luffy punched in front of him to emphasize his point. Tahaha, tell you what, kid. I don't know if any of my boys would give up their position to become a Marine though. But if you find someone who does, you have my permission to take him with you. Zeph chuckled despite himself. Really, thanks old man. You're the best. Luffy shook Zeph's hands enthusiastically. Yeah, but make sure you take care of my boys. But then again, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want someone who can't take care of themselves, right, Captain? Zeph grinned wickedly. You bet. We'll be facing many criminals out there, so he'll have to. A gunshot rang through the restaurant, cutting Luffy off mid-sentence. Both Luffy and Zeph sprinted out of the room and down to the restaurant, seeing a bloodied pirate holding onto a gun standing at the doorway of the restaurant. A Marine was lying down prone on the floor, blood oozing out from a gunshot wound from his chest. The Marine Lieutenant Fullbody was also sporting bruises and bleeding on the ground, although for what reason was unclear. Luffy, however, had his eyes locked on the Marine that was clutching at his wound on the ground. His eyes were deathly cold. Bring me some food, the pirate demanded weakly. The gun in his hands was swinging weakly in his grip. Luffy stepped away from Zeph and knelt down beside the Marine, turning him over to check his wound. The Marine barely noticed him as he shut his eyes in pain while clutching at his open wound. The first aid training Luffy did in the Marines quickly clicked themselves into place as he ran a critical eye over the wound. He relaxed slightly when he found the wound not as life-threatening as he thought. Slightly, he tore off a strip of cloth from a nearby tablecloth and tried to dress the wound as best as he could. The pirate stepped over them as he entered the restaurant. Stop right there, Luffy growled, not stopping at dressing the Marine's wounds. The pirate didn't even look at him as he pointed the gun at Luffy's head and fired a shot. Luffy's hands did not slow in tying the knot on the cloth as he moved his head to the left to dodge the bullet. The pirate's eyes widened as Luffy stood up and faced him, his eyes boring into the pirate. You shot him. It wasn't a question. It was just Luffy stating a simple fact, like a judge declaring a criminal guilty of his crimes. The pirate swung the pistol up and shot at him again. But this time Luffy caught the bullet in between his thumb and index finger without blinking. His eyes never left the pirate as he crushed the bullet into dust, advancing towards him. The restaurant watched as Luffy grabbed the pirate's gun and snapped it in his hands before pulling him up by the collar to stare directly into his eyes. You there, Marine? Hold on a moment. A blonde-haired cook walked towards him, puffing on a cigarette. Luffy wrinkled his nose at the cigarette smell which the cook noticed. The cook swiftly extinguished it in a nearby ashtray before continuing to walk towards him. He's starving. Let me feed him first before you do whatever you want with him. The cook stood before the Marine captain, hands in his pockets. Hey, what do you think you're doing, Sanji? He just shot that Marine. One of the cooks shouted at him. Sanji didn't say anything as he stood in front of Luffy, unmoving. Luffy took a glance at the cook before looking back at the pirate, fear obvious in his eyes. On the ground, the Marine coughed, wincing in pain but very much alive. Apologize to him, Luffy whispered, but it may as well have been a shout in the deathly silent restaurant. I'm sorry. The pirate barely spluttered out before Luffy dropped him on the floor unceremoniously. Lieutenant. Luffy turned to the prone officer. Fullbody immediately stood and saluted, though rather comically with his bloodied face. Yes, sir. Luffy gestured to the Marine. Bring him back to your ship and make sure he gets proper treatment. I've done all I can for now. Yes, sir. Fullbody immediately hauled the Marine on his shoulders and ran out of the restaurant, glad to be out of the place. He's all yours, Luffy said, passing by Sanji. Thanks, the cook muttered before slinging the exhausted and starving pirate over his shoulders, carrying him out of the restaurant. Luffy went towards the table his crew was at and sat down amidst the stares of everyone. The owner finally released the tension as he clapped his hands. All right, you lousy cooks, that's all the show you're getting, get back to work. Yes, Owner Zeph. The cooks shouted heartily as they scurried back to the kitchen and everyone else relaxing back into their seats. Who was that? Luffy finally asked. A member of the Krieg pirates, Zoro sighed, as though whatever happened before bore him. Apparently that Marine lieutenant from earlier was holding him custody on his ship before he broke out and escaped here. Nami offered. Yeah, and that blonde guy that was talking to you earlier. He beat up that Marine lieutenant for insulting his food. Usopp jerked his thumb towards the entrance. Oh, Luffy leaned forward, interested. So that cook can fight, huh? You're not thinking of. Nami gasped. Wait, what did the owner say to you? Zoro asked hopefully. He said that if I could convince anyone to join, I'm free to take him. Luffy grinned. Oh, no, please not him. Zoro groaned. Why not? Luffy tilted his head at Zoro. He's nothing but a pervert, Usopp added helpfully. Hey, just because he was fawning all over me and gave me free food makes him a pervert? Nami protested. Johnny and Yosaku just stared at the four Marines incredulously. Luffy clapped his hands together, remembering. Speaking of which, I should go ask him right now. Luffy stood up from the table and ran outside the restaurant. This guy, I'll never understand what's going on in that head of his. Nami sighed, slumping her head down on the table. Luffy spotted the cook and pirate near the back of the ship just as Sanji placed a plate of steaming food in front of him. Eat, Sanji ordered as he sat down beside the pirate. Why are you doing this? The pirate gasped, watching Sanji carefully. Sanji took a long drag on his cigarette before exhaling in a single long puff. I know how it feels to be without food for a long time. No matter who it is, no one deserves to starve. Now eat." The pirate took up the plate with shaky hands. "What's your name?" "Sanji," he sighed. "Thank you, Sanji." He first took a small spoonful of food, before abandoning any form of resistance, and started to shovel food into his mouth with wild abandon. "It's so good. It's too good." The pirate sobbed, tears spilling down his cheeks. Sanji just grinned as he leaned his head back, satisfied with just feeding another starving man. "Hey cook." Sanji turned to see Luffy standing a few feet away, walking towards them. "Marine." Sanji stood slowly, standing in between Luffy and the pirate. The pirate visible stiffened as he saw Luffy, seemingly shrinking smaller and smaller as Luffy got closer. "So you gave him food, huh? You're a pretty nice guy," Luffy grinned. Sanji only snorted, giving one final puff of his cigarette before tossing it away. "What do you want?" Sanji eyed the Marine captain suspiciously. "I need a cook for my crew and I'm looking for one." Luffy grinned pointedly at Sanji. Sanji seemed to get the clue but shook his head. "You'll have to ask someone else. I'm not leaving this place, much less interested in becoming a Marine." Luffy pouted. "Come on, it'll be fun. Join my crew." I said no. I don't have any interests in leaving this place. Sanji glared at the captain. "So you refuse?" Luffy raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I refuse." "Then I'll refuse too." Luffy grinned. "What? What is there to refuse?" Sanji raised an eyebrow. "I refuse your refusal." Luffy stuck out his hand to shake as though he had already agreed to join him. A tick appeared on Sanji's head as he smacked Luffy's hand away. "That's not how it works, you little shit." "Oh, then what can I do to convince you?" Luffy pouted. "Nothing you can do." Sanji turned his back on the Marine, cursing under his breath. Are you here to arrest me?" the pirate asked shakily. Luffy turned to regard the pirate with a raised eyebrow. "Huh. Of course not. I mean, you're an okay guy, I guess. I noticed you didn't aim to kill that Marine before." He frowned suddenly. "Though you did try to kill me, not that you could anyway, so it's fine." Sanji didn't know if he should laugh or cry at his naivety. Thanks, I guess. But I'm a pirate." "Oh, I believe not all pirates are bad, so unless you prove me otherwise, I have nothing against you." "Whose crew do you belong to?" "I'm Jin of the Krieg Pirates." He smiled weakly. Luffy's grin turned into a scowl as he heard the name. "That guy. He's one of the worst captains out here that you can follow. He doesn't care one bit for his crew and thinks he can get his way just with some petty tricks. And the way he's pirating, just downright atrocious, no class at all." Jin's eyes widened as he said that. He was expecting a more hostile reaction rather than just criticisms on his way of pirating. "So what do you want with me?" Jin tried to ask. "Nothing. You're gonna leave after he feeds you, right?" Luffy jerked his head towards Sanji. "Just a piece of advice. You're better off without that captain of yours. A Marine that lets a pirate go free? That's new." Sanji smirked. "You would really just willingly let me go, knowing that I'm a member of the Krieg Pirates?" Jin stared at Luffy in wonder. "Sure." Luffy crossed his arms, smiling at him. Jin shook his head, not sure what was going through the Marine's head. "Listen, Jin, I already prepared a boat for you. Get out of here as soon as you can." Sanji jerked his thumb towards a small boat tied to the back of the restaurant. "Sanji, I'll never forget this. Because of you, I'm alive." Jin held onto Sanji's hands gratefully, tears streaming past his cheeks. "Hey brat," a loud voice bellowed from above them. All three looked up to see Zeph leaning over the railing on the second floor, watching them. Jin's face fell as he stared at the empty plate beside him. "I'm sorry you'll get into trouble because of me." "Nonsense. You already paid for your food." Luffy pushed a few berry notes into Sanji before giving Jin a push in the direction of the boat. "You're really weird, you know that." Sanji grinned, clasping on the berries he received. Zeph just grunted. "Get back to work, you stupid cook." He left without waiting for an answer. "I'll never forget this, Sanji." Jin waved the cook goodbye as the boat was carried off by the waves, sailing further and further away. "So will you join my crew now?" Luffy grinned. "Hell no, I still have my own dreams to fulfill." That sparked off Luffy grabbing him by the shoulders and turning him to face him. "Really. Tell me please. Please. Get off me, you shitty Marine." Sanji pulled himself away from Luffy, stumbling. "I have no reason to tell you anyway." "Selfish," Luffy pouted. He turned to leave, his cloak swaying behind him against the wind. "I still reject your refusal though, so I'm staying here until you agree to come with me." "You damn Marine. Listen to what others say to you," Sanji yelled after the departing Marine. Things proceeded normally for the next 2 days. The Straw Hats continued to stay at the restaurant on their captain's orders to try and convince Sanji to join them, much to Zoro's dismay. "Must it be him, Captain?" Zoro groaned. "There's plenty of other chefs that we could find." "No, he's both a good chef and a good fighter. I've seen the way he moves. We'll not settle for anything less." With that, Luffy silenced any other forms of protests. On the beginning of the third day, Luffy and Nami were alone on board Mary, the other guys having gone to have their breakfast. Luffy, about the thing I asked you before. Nami hesitated. I understand, Nami. If I can't get him to join today, we'll go back to your hometown first. You don't need to worry. Luffy finished for her. Are you sure you want to follow me? For all you know, I may be leading you into a trap. Luffy took one look at her and laughed. Shishishishi. Nami, what kind of person tells the other they may be leading them into a trap if they really plan to do so? Nami grimaced. Usually the one admonishing the other for not thinking was her, not Luffy. She hung her shoulders in defeat, sighing. I do have to warn you though, I haven't officially agreed to join your crew yet, so technically I'm still not a Marine. Works for me. Once we're done with your hometown, you can officially be one of us then. Luffy grinned enthusiastically. I don't understand, why do you have so much faith in me? Nami raised an eyebrow. You haven't done anything for me not to trust you. Luffy shrugged, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. Nami sighed again. All right, one more day then I'm leaving here with or without you. Thanks Nami, though I would appreciate if a sudden explosion rang through the restaurant. Nami and Luffy glanced at each other before jumping out of their ship and running back into the restaurant. Several gunshots also rang out while they were running there. Luffy burst into the dining area just in time to see a man wearing golden armor strut out with a huge sack over his shoulders. Jin was kneeling on the floor, apologizing repeatedly to Sanji. Many of the cooks seemed to be lying around on the floor with various bullet wounds, while Sanji seemed to have taken a rather nasty hit to his face. What happened here? Luffy approached Zoro, fists clenched. Don Krieg showed up with his crew. He demanded the cooks to feed him before he got violent on them. That Zeph guy just gave him the food he asked for, even though Don Krieg had threatened to take over this ship once his men are fed. I can't believe these guys. Zoro spat. Yeah, apparently he just came back from the Grand Line when his armada of 5,000 men were decimated by a single guy. His galleon looks to be in a pretty bad shape. Usopp added helpfully. The rest of the cooks seemed to be blaming Sanji for choosing to feed Don Krieg when Zeph told them to shut up, stating none of them knew what it was like to starve to the brink of death before. Sanji smirked at him. Relax guys, it's my policy to feed starving men, but since these pirates are no longer starving, no one can blame me for beating the hell out of them when they come, right? The other cooks shook their heads at him. Hey Jin. Jin turned to see Luffy standing by the side. You're still here, huh, Marine? Jin sighed. Who's the guy who did this to your ship? Luffy stepped towards him. He's a monster, not a guy. That crazy strength can never belong to a human being. Before we even knew what was happening, he had destroyed so many of our ships with just his sword. I still remember his eyes. It was like the eyes of a hawk, staring down at me like I was his next prey. Jin was crouching down on the floor, hands covering his head in fear. Royal Shichibukai, Dracul Mihawk, Luffy finished for Jin, smiling. Everyone in the restaurant immediately stiffened hearing that name. Shichibukai, the cooks muttered. So he's here. Zoro grinned, grasping his swords tightly. Finally I will get to meet you, the world's greatest swordsman. Yells of victory came from the galleon outside the restaurant as the pirates readied themselves to attack. All the cooks had their weapons out and were marching out the door when the galleon suddenly collapsed within itself. The galleon, it got cut. Nami gasped, not believing what she was seeing. Zeph yelled out to the chefs to move the ship out of the way as parts of the galleon crashed in around them. Nami raced back to Mary in an attempt to move it out of the way as well, anchoring it a few feet away from the restaurant. There he is, the bastard. Zeph scoffed, spotting a lone figure sailing out of the mist on a coffin-shaped boat. You bastard, what have we done to you? Why did you follow us here? One of the Krieg pirates demanded. Just passing through to meet a friend, Mihawk answered, not sparing a glance at the pirates. You asshole. A pirate pointed his guns at him and fired 2 shots. Mihawk didn't even flinch as he drew his sword behind his back smoothly in an arc, deflecting the bullets away from him. Such graceful swordsmanship, truly deserving of the title of the best. Zoro gasped. He stood on the deck of the restaurant, watching Mihawk's passive face. Hey, Hawkie, you made it. Luffy jumped on the railings, waving wildly at Mihawk. Mihawk broke out in a grin, his impassive face disappearing like a mirage. He sheathed his sword as he stood up from his boat. Luffy, I got your message. How have you been? Flashback. What? Mihawk glared at the Marine boy that hasn't stopped staring at him the moment he walked into the meeting room of Marine headquarters. Both of them were currently alone as they waited for the rest to show up. You look funny, the boy blurted out innocently. I like you. Mihawk didn't know whether to laugh or rage at the boy but settled for the former. Who are you? What are you doing here? You have a nice hat. What sword is that? Why are your eyes like that? Can I touch your sword? Can I wear your hat? The boy fired off his questions like a machine gun. Hukikuku, you're an interesting one, boy. What's your name? Monkey D. Luffy. I'm going to be an admiral. Monkey, Garp's family, I see. So you want to be an admiral, huh? You've got a long road ahead of you. I don't care, I'm still going to do it. Luffy pumped his fist in the air. Hukikuku, Well said, boy. If only more people in the world had your conviction. Shishishi, so who are you? Luffy grinned at the swordsman. How rude of me. I'm Dracula Mihawk, greatest swordsman in the world. That's so cool. Luffy jumped towards Mihawk, gawking up at him. Mihawk spotted the straw hat that was tied to his back. That straw hat, did someone by the name of Shanks give it to you? Oh, you know Shanks. He gave this hat to me after I told him I'll become an admiral. Wahahaha. You're getting more and more interesting, boy. Shanks actually gave you that hat when you told him you wanted to be an admiral. Mihawk laughed. Yep, he's a really good guy. Luffy smiled, innocently. You know he's a pirate, right? Yep, he's a really good pirate too. I like him. Wahahaha. So what will you do when you catch him? Catch him? Luffy tilted his head in confusion. Why would I catch him? He's a good guy. I only catch bad guys. Kikukuku. Luffy, the world is going to feel your presence once you get out there. You have the conviction and the will to make changes like no one else has ever dreamed of. Really, do you think I can be an admiral too? Luffy grinned. That and more, Luffy. And I swear, by my name as Dracula Mihawk, that I will support your ambition as long as you swear to never stray from the path you had set out yourself. Really? Thanks, Hawkie. Hawkie. Mihawk stared at Luffy incredulously. Yeah, your eyes look like a hawk. It's so cool. Wahahaha. I've been fine. I'm glad you could make it in time. Here's the man that I told you about. Luffy gestured to Zoro. You brought him here. Zoro glanced at Luffy. Hey, you said you wanted to meet him. And we were going to stay here for a while anyway, so I called him. Luffy shrugged. So, you're Roronoa Zoro, the best swordsman of East Blue. Mihawk scrutinized Zoro. Roronoa. So it really is him. 3 swords on his waist. The pirate hunter. The cooks and pirates began muttering amongst themselves. Luffy has told me many things about you. About your ambition to surpass me as the best swordsman in the world. Indeed, Zoro grinned, tying his bandana on his head. And I wish to duel you. Mihawk snorted. I don't mean to insult you, Zoro, but the world is big. Fighting you at your current level will only be an insult to me. Zoro gritted his teeth. You don't know anything about me. Perhaps, but I can judge your strength well enough. I say the truth that your current skill level is below mine, but if you still wish to duel, I will gladly oblige. Zoro unsheathed his 3 swords and leapt across the water, landing among the remains of Don Krieg's ship. I request a duel. Very well. Mihawk took out his necklace of a cross and pulled the end out, revealing a small blade underneath. I apologize, but this is the smallest blade I have. You insult me. Zoro scowled. Not at all. This is similar to how you wouldn't use a cannon to kill a fly. Zoro's scowl deepened as he charged towards Mihawk. Onigiri. Zoro slashed all 3 of his swords at Mihawk, only for them all to be stopped by a single stab of Mihawk's blade. In an instant, Mihawk had correctly gauged the time where all 3 of Zoro's blades will converge and stab towards that point, stopping his blades from moving. Zoro could not even budge an inch against the knife that was pushing him back with a monstrous force. Impossible. This is the level of the best. I can't be so far from it. Zoro started slashing at Mihawk with wild abandon, trying to get at least a hit on him. Such ferocity, Zoro. To be the best, you at least must be calm even in the fiercest of battles. Mihawk lectured, deflecting all of Zoro's strikes gracefully. I can't lose. I didn't train all my life just to fight against his toy. Zoro slashed at Mihawk again, only for Mihawk to push him back with his blade. I want to be the strongest swordsman in the world. After all, an admiral's crew should only have the best. You knew he was this much stronger than me, and yet you had faith that I could reach him. Zoro settled into his stance, bringing the 2 swords in his hands behind the one in his mouth. Toragari. Zoro slashed forwards as Mihawk charged at him. Zoro's swords never reached his target as Mihawk stabbed at his chest. Zoro stood still staring at Mihawk as the knife pierced his chest. Why do you refuse to step back even so? Mihawk glanced at Zoro. Honestly, I don't know, Zoro confessed. But I feel like I would lose something really important if I were to even take a step back. That is your conviction, your will to deny defeat even in death. The same conviction that Luffy has that drives him to change the world. Would you rather die than be defeated? I would. Zoro gritted his teeth. Mihawk retracted his blade from Zoro's chest. You have earned my respect, Roronoa Zoro. And as a mark of that as a fellow swordsman, I shall end this duel with my black sword, the strongest in the world. Mihawk drew the sword on his back. Heh. Should I thank you? Zoro spat, raising his swords just as Mihawk began to charge. Zoro brought his swords together, eyes only on Mihawk. Santoryu Aogi, Sans and Sekai. The 2 swordsmen slashed past each other. A small shockwave blasted out from their clash. Nami gasped as the swords in Zoro's hands shattered. Zoro sheathed the last remaining sword that was in his mouth and turned to face Mihawk just as he was about to strike again. He stretched his arms wide, prepared to receive the inevitable blow. Mihawk looked at him questioningly, in which Zoro answered, a mark on the back is a swordsman's shame. Well said. Mihawk grinned as he brought the sword down on Zoro, across his chest. Zoro. All of the Straw Hat Marines cried out. You truly are worthy of being Luffy's first mate. Mihawk grinned as Zoro fell into the water. Johnny and Yosaku immediately leapt into the sea and swam towards Zoro. Mihawk, Luffy shouted, appearing in front of Mihawk and punching towards him. Mihawk barely had time to raise his sword in defense as Luffy's fist connected with his blade, the shockwave pushing Mihawk back a few steps. He managed to make him move back. Sanji gasped. As monstrous as ever, Luffy. Mihawk grinned uncontrollably. Relax, I didn't kill him. Luffy turned in time to see Johnny and Yosaku pulling out a gasping Zoro onto Mary. Nami and Usopp immediately descended upon him, with Usopp administering first aid while Nami berating him for being an idiot. Roronoa Zoro, I shall await for you at the top of this world. Get stronger and face me once again. Forge ahead with that will of yours and surpass me, Roronoa. Mihawk shouted. To think he actually acknowledges him. Sanji muttered. That guy must be crazy. Luffy, I take it your dream hasn't changed. Mihawk smirked. Not at all. I'll be standing at the top of the Marines one day for sure. He stuck his tongue at Mihawk. HMPH, I'll await that day then. Mihawk grinned. Luffy, Zoro called out from the boat, despite the others' protests. I'm sorry for embarrassing you. For you to have so much faith in me, and yet to not meet your expectations. Zoro pulled out his last sword, pointing it towards the sky. I swear by my sword, Luffy, that until I fight him again and win, I'll never lose again. Zoro, stop it. You're only making it worse. Nami cried. Any problems with that, Admiral? Zoro shouted with finality. Nope. Luffy grinned. You found a good first mate, Luffy. I'll be seeing you then. Mihawk waved as he stepped back on his boat. Mihawk. Don Krieg stepped up from behind Luffy. Aren't you here to take my head? Don't be so full of yourself. You were merely in my way when I came to meet my friend, nothing more. Someone as insignificant as you isn't even worth my time, fool. Mihawk sighed. Oh, you're planning to leave. Krieg smirked. Why don't you die first? Krieg brandished two pistols while his shoulder plates flipped up to reveal more guns, all firing simultaneously at Mihawk. Fool. Mihawk sighed as he slashed at the ground, sending a spray of water up. When the water came crashing down, Mihawk was already gone. TCH, coward, Krieg spat. He turned to regard Luffy. Now for you, little Marine, are you here to arrest me? Yes, and I'm also here to kick your ass. Luffy deadpanned. Huh, I'd like to see you try. Pearl, Krieg called out behind him. A towering man with iron-plated shields all over his body approached behind Krieg. Hey, you called for me, Don. Pearl snickered. Let's kill this upstart Marine, Krieg smirked. Both of them charged towards Luffy when a blonde-haired cook jumped in front of them, kicking at Pearl and sending him skidding backwards. 2 against 1 doesn't really seem to be that fair, don't you agree? Sanji smirked, tapping his shoe on the ground. TCH, whatever. Pearl, take care of that damn cook first. Krieg yelled. Hehe, nothing can get through my invincible wall. It's time for you to die. Pearl charged towards Sanji. Sanji kicked towards his head, but Pearl snapped his arm up and blocked it with his shield before flinging Sanji away. It's no use. My shields can block even attacks from battleship cannons. Pearl yelled confidently, charging at Sanji again. Sanji said nothing as he kicked towards Pearl's chest, which Pearl received with his shield with confidence, barely budging against the kick. It's useless. Pearl smashed his hand towards Sanji, smashing into the ground. I have never bled in all my battles before. I have a perfect battle record. You don't stand a chance. Sanji charged at him again, jumping up and holding on to Pearl's arm as he tried another smash. Then prepare to mark this day as your first bleeding. Collier shoot. Sanji kicked his foot towards Pearl's unprotected neck, smashing him into a debris of the ship. As the dust cleared, Pearl was staring at the blood that flowed from his nose. I quote am bleeding. Pearl yelled. He smashed the shields on his fist together and the sparks ignited all his shields, setting them on fire. Danger, danger, danger. Back away. Pearl shouted, swinging wildly at Sanji. This guy has a screw loose. Sanji muttered. He flipped backwards to land on his hands, legs aimed at Pearl. Poitrine shoot. Sanji kicked his foot towards Pearl's chest, knocking the man back a few feet. Why aren't you afraid of fire? Pearl demanded. If a cook is afraid of fire, he can never cook. Sanji grinned. I'll smash you. Pearl charged at Sanji again, swinging his arms at him. Sanji jumped over Pearl and kicked at the back of his head, sending him sprawling on the ground. Pearl got up on shaky legs, eyes red with anger. I'll make you pay. Fire Pearl Datokuten. Pearl flung his arms into the air as pearls of fire exploded out from him in all directions. Shit, Sanji cursed as a pearl hit him square on the chest and flung him into a debris, smashing him through it. Sanji coughed as he got out of the debris, before looking up to see a charging Pearl. He didn't have time to dodge as a flaming shield connected with his face, sending him flying back again. The Krieg pirates cheered. That's enough from you, Sanji yelled, blood dripping down his head. All talk from someone who's half dead. Pearl laughed as he charged again. Sanji's eyes burned as he flipped back on his hands again. Poitrain shoot. Sanji's boot landed squarely at Pearl's chest, and instead of bouncing off, his kick smashed right through the shield and implanted firmly on Pearl, sending him flying into the sea. There, take some time to cool off, will ya? Sanji dusted his hands. Pearl, Krieg shouted after the sinking pirate. He turned his glare at Sanji. You will pay for that. I don't think so. Luffy stepped in front of Sanji, his marine cloak fluttering in the wind. Don't touch my cook. Who's your cook? Sanji yelled. Sanji, back away from here. This could get nasty. Luffy glanced at him. Sanji saw the look in his eyes and didn't protest. Jumping back to the restaurant to join Zeph. Watch how he fights, Sanji, Zeph muttered. If you thought Mihawk was a monster, he's much more than that. That straw hat boy. Sanji glanced at Zeph. Zeph nodded slowly. If you didn't notice, Mihawk actually flinched slightly when that boy yelled at him. Sanji's eyes widened as he stared at the boy standing against Don Krieg. Who are you, boy? Krieg sneered. Captain Monkey D. Luffy of the Straw Hat Marines. I'm placing you under arrest. Heh, as if you can. Krieg took off one of his shoulder pads to hold in his hands. The shield opened up to reveal canisters clustered all around the edge of the shield. Die, filthy Marine. Krieg fired and spikes flew out of the shield towards Luffy. Tekai, Luffy muttered. Not moving as the spikes impaled themselves on him, crushing themselves on his hardened skin before dropping on the floor, barely leaving a scratch. Everyone's jaws dropped as they witnessed Luffy unharmed amidst the onslaught of spike. Krieg only cursed as he opened the cannon hidden in his armor and fired at Luffy, only for Luffy to catch the cannonball in midair. Mihawk was right about you, Krieg. You really are a fool, Luffy grinned. Don't mess with me. Krieg scowled, combining both his shoulder blades together to transform it into a spear. You will die now. Krieg charged at Luffy, spear raised in the air to smash down at him. Rankyaku. Luffy kicked his leg in the air, the compressed air slicing the spear off at the head, just below the combined shoulder blades. You brat, Krieg cried as he witnessed high best weapon sliced without the straw hat moving from his position. I'll kill you. Yada, 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 Luffy droned, appearing in front of Krieg. You're not strong enough to kill me. Chicken. Luffy pierced his finger into Krieg's golden armor. Krieg stared dumbly at the single finger that managed to penetrate his impenetrable defense. Blood was already oozing out from the wound at his abdomen. What are you? Krieg spluttered. A Marine. Luffy smirked, withdrawing his hand before delivering a crushing blow into Krieg's chest, shattering the armor. Turning on his heels, he lifted his leg and kicked at Krieg's head, smashing him into the ground with a satisfying boom. That boy is the real monster, Zeph grinned. So you're not going to arrest us? Jin stared at Luffy incredulously. Everyone had retreated back into the restaurant, and the Krieg pirates were standing in front of Luffy, who was enjoying a hearty victory meal. Krieg was tied up and unconscious on the floor behind him. No, I only need Krieg. You guys didn't do anything, so you can go. Luffy waved his hand. But we have nowhere else to go. One of the pirates protested. Do any of you know how to cook? Zeph stepped up towards them. Most of them shook their heads. Zeph sighed. If all of you don't mind to learn, I suppose I can hire you guys here. All of the pirates gasped. You'll take in a bunch of pirates like us? Jin asked. Zeph shrugged and gestured to his cooks. These boys aren't exactly the gentlemen when I picked them all up. You guys will fit right in. Jin got down on his knees, as did all the Krieg pirates. Will be in your care, Owner Zeph. As everyone started celebrating the arrival of more staff, Nami nudged Luffy impatiently, tapping at her wrist. Luffy sighed and went to the kitchen to find Sanji. Hey, Sanji, join my crew. Not this again. I already told you no, I can't leave this place. Sanji sighed, cleaning one of the knives. Why not? Luffy tilted his head. I owe the old man too much for me to leave like this. He and I shared the same dream back then. It would be too selfish of me to run away now. Luffy grabbed him quickly by the shoulders. Your dream. Tell me please. Please, 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 please. Stop it. I'm not Telly. To find the All Blue, Zeph walked into the kitchen. All Blue. Luffy raised an eyebrow. Aye, it is said that every kind of fish can be found there. It is the chef's paradise. Zeph grunted. Go, you stupid eggplant. Chase that silly dream of yours. You're better out there than in here. I don't need your help with all these new guys I'll be having. But it's not fair. Sanji teared up. I'll tell you what's not fair, you silly brat. You stuck with an old man like me when you can be out there pursuing that dream of yours. Go with the Marine and chase our dream for us. Zeph grinned. Old man. Aye, don't do that to me, you stupid eggplant. Tearing up despite himself. Go before I kick you out myself. Sanji got on his knees. I'm eternally grateful for taking care of me for so long. Tears flowed freely down his cheeks. I'll never in my life ever forget the debt I can never repay you. Damn it. The rest of the chefs exploded into the kitchen. Why can't you just leave without saying anything? Huh, you damn bastard. We're going to be so lonely without you, you stupid cook. We'll all miss you, you bastard. All the chefs cried. Sanji looked at them with a big smile on his face. Let's meet again one day, you good-for-nothing bastards. Sanji cried with them. Nami SWAN. Would you like some desserts? Sanji pirouetted his way to the seated navigator, placing a piece of cake in front of her. Thank you, Sanji. Nami smiled at him, causing him to spin around in happiness. Hey, what about me? Usopp protested from the side. Shut up, I already gave you guys tea, didn't I? Sanji pointed an accusing finger at Usopp. You sexist cook. Usopp pouted. Shut up, girls will always get better treatment from me. Sanji pirouetted his way back to Nami's side again. Meanwhile, Luffy was seated beside the bed that Zoro was resting in. I see what you mean by a pervert now, Luffy remarked, grinning. Isn't that right, Captain? Why does it have to be him out of everyone else? In the restaurant, Zoro said in between breaths. He seemed to be in pain as he said each word, but found the strength to smirk back at him. Nevertheless, he's a good guy, Zoro. Don't be too hard on him, Luffy chuckled. HMPH, I'll be nicer to him. If he stops showing that pathetic face to everything that doesn't have a sausage in between their legs, Zoro huffed. Sausage? Luffy asked, opening his pants to look into it. Never mind. Forget I said that. Zoro groaned. On another note, how the hell are you such close friends with Mihawk? Luffy brightened at the mention of the swordsman's name. Oh, he came to headquarters a few times throughout my training. My trainer made me spar with him a few times, then we hung out after that. You sparred with him? Zoro tried to sit up, but Luffy pushed him back down. Stop moving, or I'm tying you to the bed. Luffy frowned. And yes, I sparred with him, though I never won even once. Hawkeye is really strong. You're the weirdest Marine I've ever seen. Zoro sighed. Shishishi. Hawkeye said the same thing too. Luffy laughed, scratching the back of his head. Zoro sighed. So you told him about me? Luffy nodded, grinning uncontrollably. What did you tell him? Zoro watched Luffy carefully. Luffy pondered for a while, scratching his chin. I told him that you wished to meet and defeat him to claim his title of the best. I also told him you were the best swordsman on this side of the world. Zoro's eyes widened. What? What did he say? He asked me what you were like. I told him that you weren't at his level yet, but you still had the potential to catch up to him. Luffy smiled sheepishly. Zoro just stared wide-eyed at Luffy. After fighting Mihawk firsthand, he knew the vast difference in strength between them, and yet Luffy still saw in him the possibility of surpassing Mihawk. He gritted his teeth, remembering the embarrassing fight he had with Mihawk. He knew all the while Mihawk was only testing him and never took the fight seriously. Heck, he probably even went easy on him, seeing how he knew Luffy from the start. Why? Why do you have so much faith in me? Zoro frowned. Luffy stared at him for a moment, not answering the question. Why, Luffy? Zoro asked again, demanding an answer. You think too little of yourself, Zoro. Luffy grinned. That girl you helped back then. You willingly subjected yourself to that torture to save her, even if it meant you might lose your chance to attain your dream. Not many can do that unless you have the will to live through every obstacle that life throws at you to protect your dream. You are much stronger than you think. Luffy pointed at the swordsman. Zoro, you have the will to become the best, and Mihawk saw it in you too. My trainer always said that he would have a good judge of your character just by looking at you, though my trainer never really liked him, or any of the 7 warlords in any case. Shishishishi. Zoro stared slack-jawed at his captain. And you said he had given you his support on becoming an admiral. Yep. Luffy grinned proudly. He told me he didn't like how the government is dealing with everything nowadays and would be glad to see someone put a twist in their ruling, Marine or not. He's asking you to go against the world government, Zoro exclaimed before suffering a coughing fit. Luffy pushed him down onto the bed again. No, nothing of that sort. I'm still a Marine after all. He just wants someone who wouldn't blindly follow the rules. That's all. That's why he suggested me to request these things from the Fleet Admiral. Luffy pulled out the document that his grandpa had given him. Zoro, read it carefully. How are you even able to get clearance for this? All these seem so, well, out of your rank, that, well, my trainers might have pulled a few strings. Luffy scratched his head in embarrassment. Zoro shook his head slowly. Even so, I don't think any trainer could have helped you get clearance for half of those things written there. And who is this Vice Admiral Garp? I've heard you mention him a couple of times. Luffy sucked in his cheeks and looked away. Well, I can't tell. And, I don't know. Luffy started whistling while shoving the document back into his coat with sweat dripping down his face. Zoro shook his head at his captain's inability to lie. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. It doesn't really concern me anyway. I'm just glad I don't have to jump at any orders from any other Marine officer while I'm under you. Zoro grinned. Luffy sighed in relief. Anyway, sorry for embarrassing you. It must have sucked to see me get my ass handed to me like that. Zoro frowned. Luffy shook his head quickly. Not at all. I know how strong Mihawk is too. You just have to get stronger and beat him one day. Zoro grinned. No complaints there. Both of them laughed. Zoro rested for the next few days, and Luffy stayed by his side most of the time, making sure he doesn't get out of bed despite Zoro's protests. Sanji fit into the crew almost immediately with Nami there, and he didn't mind that he was now a Marine either, stating that if Nami Swan's a Marine, I'll definitely be one too. Nami herself didn't seem to mind his constant fawning, though on a few occasions she did beat him up for trying to make advancements on her. Zoro himself had already recovered well enough to move around, but Luffy still insisted he stayed in bed and rest instead of training himself to death. Luffy was watching over Zoro again when a knock sounded on the door as Nami entered. "Luffy, may I talk to you for a bit?" "Sure, I'll be right back, Zoro." Luffy gave a thumbs up, which Zoro returned with a grin. Luffy closed the door behind him as Nami led him to the back of their ship. Usopp was up at the crow's nest looking out for Nami's hometown while Johnny and Yosaku were sparring with each other on the deck, shouting about defeating Mihawk and reclaiming Zoro's honor. A fragrant smell drifted from the kitchen, suggesting Sanji hard at work again. "Listen, Luffy, there's someone in my hometown that I owe a great deal of money to, and right now, I have enough to pay him back." "Hey, you owe someone money," Luffy gasped. "Shut up, let me finish." Nami smacked him on the head. "That guy's a pirate and he's not known to be the most honest one out there, so I would really appreciate it if you guys don't cause any trouble while you're there." Nami pointedly glanced at Luffy, who raised both his hands in surrender. "I'll be a good boy." "Good. Once I settle this debt with him, I'll finally be free from him, so please don't screw this up for me." Nami grabbed him by the shoulders. "I don't need any more problems coming from him, please. How much do you owe this guy, Nami?" Luffy tilted his head. Nami bit her lip, glancing away, hesitating. 100 million berries. 110.99. SSSHH. Nami covered Luffy's mouth with her hands. "Please, I waited too long and worked too hard to come this far. I don't want this to screw up," Nami pleaded. Luffy nodded dumbly before Nami removed her hand from his mouth. "Will you become our navigator once you're done with him?" Luffy smiled. Nami hesitated, stroking her left arm. She was going to say no, but she didn't know if she had a right to stay in her village after what she had put them through. She thought back on how her villagers had shouted at her to never return to the village after she revealed to them that she had joined their tormentors as a crewmate. "I'll think about it," Nami said finally, turning to walk away. "Nami," Luffy called, stopping her. "That guy's a bad pirate, right?" Nami glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. I guess so. Then why don't we just go beat him up?" Luffy suggested innocently. Nami gasped but shook her head quickly. "You can't fight him, Luffy. He's a fishman. He's really, really strong." "So, I'm really, really strong too." Luffy grinned, flexing his arm to emphasize his point. Nami shook her head. "No, Luffy, he's too strong. A fishman is born 10 times stronger than a normal human. He's stronger than any of us. I know this because I've seen him fight. A number of Marines have already tried to arrest him in the past, but he took them all out. I don't want you to be one of them too." She bit her lips sadly. "I didn't know you cared for us like that." Luffy grinned. "Don't get ahead of yourself. I just like you guys a little better than the others I've traveled with." She poked a finger at Luffy's forehead. "Just promise me you won't do anything rash there. I'm afraid he might do something to everyone I care about if you were to interfere." Luffy saw the pleading look in her eyes and nodded quickly. "But I must have your word that you would join our crew officially." "You're really mean, you know that." Nami smiled despite herself before turning away, not answering him. She leaned against the railing as she stared out at sea, her back towards him. "Luffy, if I turn out to be a pirate in the end, would you still want me to be part of your crew and sail with you?" Nami glanced back at Luffy hesitatingly. "Hey, you're a pirate." Luffy stared at Nami. "I'm saying, what if, all these while I've been traveling with you and calling myself a Marine, only to reveal to you that I've actually been a pirate all along? But you're still a good guy, right?" Luffy grinned. Nami couldn't help but smile back. "I'm a girl, you know." "Then you're still a good girl, right?" Luffy corrected himself, grinning wider. Nami giggled before her face became sad again, turning away from him. "Perhaps. I don't know that myself. I've hurt too many people to call myself a good person." "Land ho, Kakoyasi village in sight," Usopp shouted from the crow's nest. There was a scampering of feet as Johnny and Yosaku rushed to the prow of the ship to see for themselves. "Just promise me, Luffy." Nami glared ahead at the island. "I'll do it if you promise me to be safe." Luffy grinned. "That much I can do." Nami grinned back at him, walking away to join the rest. Brother Luffy, why are we here?" Johnny trembled slightly. "Yeah, you didn't tell us." "Sister Nami's hometown was here," Yosaku stuttered. "Why? What's wrong with this place?" Usopp raised an eyebrow at them. "There's a really dangerous pirate that's living here. If he finds out that you guys are Marines, there's no telling what he would do to you." Johnny exclaimed, waving his arms in the air. "His crew is full of fishmen. Each of them are stronger than any human. I've heard that the captain himself single-handedly took down 5 Marine ships, all by himself. His crew is full of monsters." Yosaku shook Usopp by the shoulders. "What's that bastard doing in Nami's hometown?" Sanji demanded, fire in his eyes. "He took over the island as his own quite some time ago. Nami's village should be no exception. Johnny gestured towards the town in front of them. Nami had already departed the ship alone with the bags of treasure she had accumulated and disappeared into the village. Sanji had wanted to follow her, but she had smacked him across the deck with her staff, instantly shutting down all his protests. "We should go and kick that guy's ass for her," Sanji yelled. His foot was on the railing, preparing to jump ship. Luffy pulled him back onto the deck, sending him sprawling on the floor. "Hey, what's the big idea, Captain?" Sanji demanded, grabbing Luffy by his collar. "Shut up." Luffy pushed his hand away, his straw hat covering his eyes. "I promised Nami that we wouldn't interfere while she's on the island, so everyone's going to stay put on this ship unless I say otherwise." Sanji's eyes widened at those words. "But, he's, fine. But if Nami gets hurt, I'm blaming you," Sanji huffed, storming back to the kitchen. Luffy stayed on the now silent deck, staring hard at the village with his arms crossed. "Luffy, are you sure it's fine like this?" Usopp asked hesitatingly, looking at the kitchen door. Luffy glanced back at Usopp before staring back at the village again. "Usopp, bring Johnny and Yosaku to check on Zoro, and don't come out until I say so." Usopp nodded and scurried away with the two swordsmen, seeing the look in Luffy's eyes. "Arlong, you better not hurt my navigator." Luffy gritted his teeth. Flashback. Jinbei walked along the corridors of the Marine headquarters, answering yet another summons from the Marines. Back then, he never liked to come here due to the all-too-serious atmosphere. But after Garp brought Luffy here to train, it was like the whole place had lit up from the boy's limitless energy. The boy just had a talent to worm his way into everyone's hearts. Now was his third time here since Luffy's arrival, and he already found himself looking forward to seeing Luffy again. Speaking of which, that person was currently clinging onto his back, being given a piggyback ride to the meeting room. Luffy had a huge grin plastered on his face, clearly enjoying the ride. "Jinbei, do you think you can bring me to visit Fishman Island? I want to see it." "I'd like to, Luffy, but your grandpa will have my head if I drag you away from your training." Jinbei chuckled. He remembered the time he had somehow been convinced by Luffy to take him to visit Cabaji. They had barely reached the ship when a fuming Garp had showed up, screamed at a stunned Jinbei, punched Luffy on the head and dragged him, screaming, back to Marineford. "What about after my training? I want to see what the other fishmen are like." Luffy grinned, unfazed. "Ha, it's a deal then. When you're a full-fledged Marine, come look for me again, Luffy." Jinbei chuckled heartily. "All fishmen must be nice like you." "Tashishi." Luffy grinned. Jinbei sighed at that. "Unfortunately, not all fishmen are like me, Luffy." "Really? Oh, is it that Hody and Arlong you always told me about?" "Those two are a few examples, especially Arlong and his crew. Hody hasn't been active lately, but Arlong is a different story. From what I heard, he's been terrorizing a few villages out in East Blue on the Konomi Islands for a while now. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing in releasing him." Jinbei shook his head sadly. "So he's a bad guy?" Luffy asked, tilting his head. Jinbei pondered that question for a while. "I wish I could answer that easily, Luffy. If I have to say, it's just that he has a twisted way of viewing things around him. It's not entirely his fault though." Luffy scratched his head. "That's so confusing." Jinbei laughed. "Just take it this way, Luffy. I wouldn't mind if you didn't like what he was doing and taught him a lesson about it." "Tashishi, that, I can understand." Luffy chuckled. "Nijiko, I'm back." Nami pushed open the wooden door leading to her house. Her sister was busy sorting the tangerines she just gathered into wooden crates. "Nami, you're back," Nijiko exclaimed, dropping the tangerines in her hands and running up to her little sister, pulling her in a tight hug. "I'm back, sis, and I've finally done it." Nami sobbed into Nijiko's arms. Nijiko pulled away to stare at Nami. You did." Nami nodded, wiping tears away from her eyes. "But you said you needed around 20 million more. You got all that just from this trip." Nijiko gasped. "She did. I was surprised myself." A man wearing full black police attire walked in, his body covered with scars. A police hat rested on his head and a small pinwheel spun freely on top of it. "Jen," Nijiko exclaimed, surprised that he would follow Nami here. Nami wiped the last of her tears away before punching Nijiko playfully on the arm. "You lied to me about keeping the deal secret. Everyone in the village knows. The moment I told them I already have the money to free everyone was already cheering. I was expecting at least an angry mob of some sort, you know." "Oh, that. Well, everyone wouldn't stop bugging me about why you joined the pirates until I told them the truth." Nijiko scratched her head in embarrassment. "Isn't it fine? It just makes the celebration afterwards even merrier. Everyone is already preparing a feast." Jen grinned. "What would I do without you two?" Nami sniffled, hugging the two of them. There, Nijiko patted Nami's back. "Why don't you go give that stupid pirate your good news? We'll get the money ready for you." "I will." Nami pulled away from them, tears still dripping past her cheeks. "We'll finally be free." "Oh, right. Nami, what about the Marine boat anchored just outside our town?" Jen asked. "Marines," Nijiko gasped. "They're my friends." Nami smiled, shocking the two. They helped me gather the rest of the money this time. If it weren't for them, I might still not have enough. In fact, had you guys not accepted me back after I bought the village from Arlong, I would have left with them to join as a Marine. Then we better go thank them, then. Jen smiled, dashing back to the village. So you're going to be a Marine? Nijiko watched Nami carefully. I don't know. The captain offered and I can't say I'm not tempted to. They're all really nice people. Nami smiled. Nijiko just shook her head, smiling. Well, one thing at a time then. Get yourself to Arlong first. Then we'll throw a celebration right after that. Nami nodded before sprinting out of the hut, running faster than she ever had before. Hey, a voice shouted towards Luffy. Luffy looked down to see a small rowboat heading towards them with a heavily scarred man waving at him. There was a small pinwheel on top of the hat he wore which Luffy couldn't help but smile at. I heard you guys helped Nami out. Can I come up? Luffy's grin widened and threw him a rope, pulling him up onto the ship. Thanks, I'm Jen. I guess you can see me as Nami's godfather. I'm the mayor of this village. Jen stuck out his hand and Luffy shook it. Nice to meet you. I'm Captain Monkey D. Luffy of the Straw Hat Marines. Nami sailed with us for a while. Luffy grinned. I heard. She told me you helped her get the money she needed to pay off Arlong for the village. Jen smiled. Pay off the village? Luffy tilted his head questioningly. She only told me that she was in debt with him. Nothing about paying off a village. I see she didn't tell you the whole story. You see, Arlo. Hey, Luffy, who's this? Sanji walked out from the kitchen, gesturing at Jen. Sanji, good timing. Go get the rest to come out here. Luffy jerked his chin towards the men's room, ignoring Sanji's question. TCH, do I have to? Sanji groaned, turning back to get the other guys. Luffy turned back to Jen. Before that, Jen, I would like to ask one thing. What has the Marines in charge of this place done about Arlong? Well, there were a few attempts to arrest him, but all of them ended in failure when their ships couldn't even reach the shore. The fishmen would just swim out to their ships and sink it without giving them a fighting chance. Jen sighed. We do see a specific Marine ship from the 16th branch from time to time, but they never seem to engage the pirates. I see. Luffy scratched his chin just as Sanji returned with everyone, even Zoro. Zoro, are you sure you should be moving around? Luffy raised an eyebrow. I'm fine already. Quit worrying about me. Zoro waved his hand. Luffy shrugged. Anyway, guys, this is Jen. He's Nami's father. Godfather, Jen corrected. And I thank you Marines for taking care of her while she's out there. You have no idea how much she has to suffer for the sake of everyone in the village for the last 8 years. You said something about Nami buying this village? Luffy asked, crossing his arms. Jen nodded slowly. 8 years ago, Arlong had taken over our island and everyone suffered because of him. He would kill and torture us at the slightest fault he finds with us, sometimes just for having the audacity to exist alongside him. Not to mention the fees that we have to pay him every month ensures we would always be barely able to scrape by. Nami's mother had been killed by him when they first came here, trying to protect Nami and her sister from them. That bastard. How dare he? Sanji cried before Luffy smacked him on the head, asking Jen to continue. Nami had went ahead and sought out Arlong to make a deal with him. If she was able to pay him 100 million berries in a single payment, he would leave the village and her alone. But there is also the condition that she joins his crew to draw maps for him while she's still collecting the money. And if she dared to try to escape, Arlong will slaughter the whole village. And she finally did it today. Usopp asked hopefully. Yes, and she has you guys to thank for it. She said if it weren't for you guys, she might have needed even more time to get that amount of money. For that, we all thank you, and all of you are welcome to join the feast that we are preparing. Jen gestured to the crowd of villagers waving at them at the harbor. I hope you guys have booze. Zoro grinned. I want meat. Luffy punched his hands in the air. Not bad to have someone cook for me for a change. Sanji smirked. Let's go then. Usopp yelled in victory. We're really grateful. Both Yosaku and Johnny cried. Nami stood defiantly at the iron gates of Arlong Park, glaring at it. She clenched her fists. She had no reason to be afraid of this place anymore. Today was the day she would free her village and herself from the fishman's influence. She shoved open the door and walked in proudly, her head held high. Oh, Nami's back. Welcome back, Nami. So who did you betray this time? How much money did you get? Was it worth backstabbing them? As expected of our cold-hearted Nami. All the fishmen cheered as she entered the pirate's base. It seemed as though all of them were in the midst of celebrating something before she entered the park. She said nothing as she headed straight for her target, the one sitting arrogantly on his small throne as though he owned everything around him. She gritted her teeth as he stared at her, but she refused to look away from him. Tomorrow, no, today, he will disappear from her life. Welcome back, Nami. He smiled wickedly, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The sawshark fishman laid back on his throne, his Hawaiian shirt unbuttoned to reveal his muscled chest, as if to dare anyone to challenge him in strength. Arlong, she breathed. I'm back. I hope you didn't kill anyone while I was gone. Of course not, Nami. He returned on time after all. I wouldn't dream of angering my precious little cartographer, Arlong sneered. But why the hostility, Nami? Aren't we all crewmates here? Nami ignored his question. You still remember the promise you made to me 8 years ago, right? Arlong snickered. Of course, how can I ever forget, my precious Nami? Bring me 100 million berries and you and your village will be free from me. Nami smirked at his arrogance. He didn't know she already had it. Good, then relinquish your control over Kakoyasi village. I have your 100 million. Arlong's smirk dissolved into a frown almost immediately. You said that you had another 20 million to go the last time. You're telling me you managed to get all that in just a single trip? Yep, I had an overwhelmingly good haul this time. Anyway, come collect it when you can. I'll be waiting for you. Nami grinned, twirling around and walking back out of the park without a single glance back. All the while, she could feel Arlong glaring into her back, but she didn't turn back even then. When she was finally out of sight from the park, she let herself collapse onto the floor. Her whole body was shaking. She had done it. After 8 long years of sweat and blood, she had finally done it. Now all she had to do was to prepare all the money and present it to him. Then she can finally be free. Everyone in her village could be free. Nami slowly got up from the ground and made a dash back home. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.